Good evening, everybody. Welcome to season 2025 for ASR Supercars. The championship is back for the 8th year in succession. It's a trip to Sydney Motorsport Park for the opening round of 12 this season, but it's an opening round with a twist. It might be Sydney Motorsport Park, but for the first time in ASR history, it is a dual layout night. A sprint race on the short Druitt circuit and a longer race on the more traditional Gardner layout, more akin to supercars in real life. And this one is sure to throw a bit of a cat amongst the pigeons. Who is going to adapt the best to sprint racing? Who's going to then be able to translate that to the longer format over a longer distance? Well, there's 2 qualifying sessions to sort it out and 2 races to figure it all out and put the points in the bank for the first round of the championship as it heads towards its November conclusion. It's Steve DeVries here once again in the box. Once again opposite me is, of course, Benjamin Rhodey Rhodes. Rhodey, welcome to 2025. What a way to start the year.
Absolutely. It's going to be a really, well, hopefully it's going to be a really good way to start this year, but we've seen already from the Dev Series race a week prior that it definitely threw a curveball at the field. And good evening to everyone watching along at home, or good morning, or good wherever you are. Yeah, it's good to see the field have come out as strong as they have again for the first round of 2025. We're sitting at 21 cars currently in the server out of 25 entries, which is pretty good if you guys are off with injuries and just unable to make it, which is unfortunate, but it is a realistic, or it's not a, unfortunately, it's a common thing with where racing is at, but. Look, 21 cars around SMP were pretty good, and while it's not the first time that we've done multiple tracks technically in one night, we go back to the split round nights of the Development Series Summer Series of 2020 and 2021, where we'd fit 2 rounds of racing into one night. This is definitely the first time that the Supercars guys have done this, and the first time that we've run the same track with 2 different layouts. And there's only a few other tracks you could do this at. We could do it at the Bend, you could do it at QR, we do it at Winton. But realistically, yeah, SMP is the best one to work it with, and it'll be good because they both have very different characteristics. SMP's short circuit, very much a Calder or a Simmons in style. The bigger one, you're leaning more, I suppose, more towards a Bubba Gallo, but even then you're going longer again, more like a Phillip Island in terms of the long length.
Yeah, I like the way you've put it there. That's pretty much a really good analogy, and it's almost identical in terms of the lap times, right? So it's a sub 1 minute lap time if you're quick enough around the Druitt layout, which is about the same sort of lap time you would do around a Calder. The circuit length is not too dissimilar, and then similar sort of type of lap time again on the longer Gardner layout, although Gardner's about half a kilometre shorter in length than Phillip Island, but Phillip Island's a higher average speed circuit, actually the highest average speed circuit in a permanent circuit in the country. So of course, that's why you're sort of doing roughly the same sort of lap time there or thereabouts between the 2 circuits. But not a bad analogy, good way to start proceedings. And as you said, we did do a couple of rounds or nights back in the day when it was cramming 2 different rounds on 2 different tracks into the same night of racing. Very, very different tonight where it's the same track, not leaving the confines of the circuit, but there is a layout switch that goes on. So we have done both circuits in the past. Druitt was last raced, I think, about 2 years ago when it was a bit of an oddball choice. No one had ever sort of done that circuit before. So we ended up picking that circuit, but the more traditional Gardner layout has been around and has been raced routinely for some time. So that part of it's no stranger to a lot of these drivers, but it's about managing the transition over the night. You can look at this from a few drivers from what the Dev Series did, and there was a 20-minute sort of practice period swap over after race 1 before qualifying for race 2 when the layout changed, and a few drivers still got to the braking zone for turn 4 and went left instead of going right. So it does take a little bit of a few minutes to readjust to the fact that you've gone back to the traditional layout, and that's why the practice session is there, just so people, when they go out on their next qualifying lap, they don't make a mistake, shortcut the circuit, lose a lap, and then it all hell breaks loose because you've skipped a marshal's post. So that's the way it works, and that's the way we're going to run it. So we will have a look at the first circuit for the night. We are going to the same spot on the Google Earth map for both races tonight, but of course the layout's just a little bit different, as we have been alluding to. All the way east of Sydney in the old Quarry Precinct, it's commonly a bit of an industrial area now, just to the south of the Eastern Creek circuit, but there it is, the shorter layout of Sydney Motorsport Park. That is used in most permanent circuit activities, the shortest one available. It is the Druitt layout. Highlighted, of course, by where it goes left instead of right at turn number 4. Shortcuts and takes out the big dog leg and then passes all the way down to the final couple of sequence of corners, which is the same for the Gardner layout. It's a 22-lap journey. It's the sprint format for this race, and Rody, the most important thing this year is where there's a sprint race, the tyre offset is a little bit different. It's now full-on sprint racing, not full-on tyre management.
Absolutely. So we've gone from a 2x multiplier consistently applied across the season to a lot of the rounds now will have a 1x time multiplier, which will give them a bit more tyre life. And it's one of the bits of feedback coming out of last year where there was a lot of times where drivers are having to try and manage tyres within a sprint race, and it kind of conflicted with the intent of what sprint racing was supposed to be. It didn't affect some drivers. Some drivers could really master the gap between time management and pace. But for a lot of drivers, the general consensus was, look, if there's going to be a sprint race, we'd like to actually be allowed to sprint in the sprint races. So that's the change for this year. There will be some longer races where we still stick with 2 times, especially ones where we want to try and bring in a little bit of a tyre strategy around the use of different compounds. Tonight we're going to only see the soft tyre, but there will be rounds across the year where the hard tyre will pop up, and maybe 1 or 2 where the hard tyre is the preferred compound to begin with. But yeah, it was really trying to still trying to have some strategy elements to play in the season. We know that benefited a lot of people last year. The likes of, say, of a Matt Cecil on Development Series was able to do quite well with racing that involved. I wouldn't say racing doesn't involve thinking, but racing that involved plugging the big brain in and actually planning your way through a race rather than just going out there and hitting the best sectors. But there is definitely, look, at the end of the day, people want to race to feel quick. They want to be out there battling with each other. And if you're having to sit there and manage your car through it, you don't really get the best go of it. And some drivers, their best is in just going out there and just setting fast laps. And hopefully we're going to see a little more of that, and we'll hopefully see some of those drivers excel this year.
Absolutely. That's what we're looking forward to the most, is a number of drivers have made that transition from Dev to Supercars this year, some of it by choice. A few drivers are also doing double duty, and we look to see what sort of pace and what sort of things that they can bring to the main game this year. The warning has gone out. It is time to advance to qualifying for the first time in season 2025 for Supercars. The field is very much getting ready to roll down the lane. In fact, I can see a few cars that are out there already, but we are going to wait just a few minutes because the game does do a couple of weird and wonderful things where it waits for everybody to resynchronize before we get back up and running. As is customary, it is 10 minutes on the clock for qualifying. It is a no holds bar, pretty much go out there, get your lap done, no excuses to get it done, and set your best time. So it's a short layout, so you'll get plenty of laps in. So that's the important bit of information to take out of this is that it's not because of the short layout and sub 1 minute lap time, you could very easily get, a half a dozen flying laps, split your strategy down the middle, get out quickly, get 3 laps on the board, get in, get a new set of tyres, and then basically go again. That's what you're looking at. So a couple of drivers that are already queued up. The green light is on and we are underway. So let's have a look at this field of 21 cars. There's some familiar looking colours there, Rhodey, from last year compared to this year, and there's a few colours that are a little bit different, and that's of course because we have got some new entries, but we have got some repaints this year as well.
Yeah, so there are some cars out there running season cars from last year. There are some cars out there that are using an alt. I think Noah Taro's one. I believe that alt was used at the back end of last year, and he's brought it back as a full-time livery this year. There are also some ones that are completely new, and there are some ones that have been slightly reimagined from previous year's liveries. I think a good example for that is Steve Warwick's, which is actually based off of the car that Leonard Grossel ran last year. The red and black No Fear car has been slightly modified and has become the blue and black. I know it's not. I know what the energy drink is. It's owned by the same company that did No Fear, but we'll get to it when we see it on the track.
Isn't it Sobe or something like that?
It's Sobe is the overarching company for both of them. It's Adrenaline Rush is the energy drink. Yep. But yeah, they owned and produced both Adrenaline Rush and No Fear in the US.
On board with Ryan Smith here. He's the first man out to start flying laps. So this part of the Sydney Motorsport Park circuit is the parts that are common between the two circuits, or the two layouts you'll see tonight. But instead of staying to the left here, you've got to move it over to the right, because you need to brake just around those boards on the right-hand side, get it flicked in, it's really difficult, especially the Dev Series car, to get it right to go up, because there is an elevation change as well as the turn in. You've got to hit those curbs just nicely so you don't get a track strike. And then you've got to ride it and sort of just manage the throttle to get yourself up and over the lip and up and over the hill before you reapply the throttle, and then head down to the final couple of corners that are basically the same as per the last couple of corners in the final sector in the Sydney Motorsport Park layout. Ryan Smith's gone a 59.4. It's not too bad, but there is definitely some room for improvement on that one. And you can see a few drivers just posting some times. Dostal's just gone a little bit slower than that, not too far. Tara's had an early benchmark that he's been set, and the times are slowly starting to come in now. First 6 on the board. Previous champion Brent Foley here, exiting turn 5 on this layout, which would be turn 8 on the second layout tonight. Some familiar colours for Foley, but again, of course, with the usual ASR twist. And into the final couple of corners he goes, and then exit out of this final corner. So important, Rhodey. Big, long straight into a really high-speed approach into turn number 1.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's one of those things that there isn't a slightly change across the two layouts, actually. It's the run into that last corner complex does change slightly. You find yourself with a bit more speed in this layout, because you, even though you're having to go up and over a hill, you're still having basically a much straighter corner exit than you are with the full layout. So you're probably about... I didn't track speed last week in Dev Series. All I knew was I think, top of 4th or bottom or middle of 5th in one layout, and I was top of 4th in another layout. So
big pirouette there for Bailey Hall, exiting the final corner, just getting on the power a little bit too early. Very, very easy to do. Oh, Kurt Stenberg behind him had a little bit of a moment there as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So, yeah, Kurt's already, he was the top time, as actually Noah's gone and improved upon that benchmark time that he set, and he's actually green again, so he's possibly going to be nudging into 59.1 territory, if not a little lower again, for instance, how the last sector goes. But yeah, some quick times already, and it's interesting to see who's appearing at the top of the tree. Will Devonish not won, he's currently down in 9th, granted halfway of the session, not even done yet. But Tara currently at the top, Stenberg second, Aidan Williams in 3rd. And he's someone we didn't see a lot of last year, so for him to be popping up in that sort of position is odd. And Ryan Smith temporarily, for about 3 seconds there, had pole before Noah took it back off him. So Ryan's pretty quick as well tonight.
And you want to know what's funny? I reckon Tara got maybe a little bit of a distant toe from the number 60 as well, going down the front straight. Wouldn't have been much, might have been just enough, because he was very, very close to going sub 59 seconds for that lap there. So he's going again. Tara's probably about his 3rd lap on that set of tyres. So he'll probably get to the end of this and then decide to go and have another crack. Actually, he's bailing out of it right now. So There you go. Him and Ryan Smith both bailing back out of it, going to find some new tyres. Steve Warwick, Renstall PBF Blackshaws. He's done his first opening stint and coming out for another run. Exiting the lane, so plenty of time. This is the halfway point in the session, so with a short layout, plenty of time to get yourself out and get a plethora of laps in.
Absolutely, yeah. It's probably this might potentially end up being the one of the sessions of the year where drivers will get the most attempts at a qualifying lap. Simmons is another example, but there is a special format coming up for SMP for Simmons. Which will mean that not every driver has the same amount of laps to play within qualifying. And then Barbagallo. But this is probably slightly quicker. The other thing as well is just the get up to speed time. Like it's similar lengths to Simmons and to Barbagallo, and Barbagallo is the special example here. But we're not seeing the sort of gamesmanship that we normally see at Barbagallo, where everyone trains out in one long train and then slows down to 40 k's an hour for the school zone along the back straight, so they all get a run at the start-finish line. I think partially because of the nature of this track, it naturally stretches cars out a little bit, so you don't have to sit there and play the F1 game of, right, let's all race to the second last corner and then back up again to stretch it all out, which is where we get it's where you get the interplay, and it's where you end up with, causing accidents and whatnot. But it's you get the most cracks at it, which is good because you can easily reset and go again. The problem is at least where the tyres are at for these guys, they're only going to get really 2 or 3, maybe 4 laps out of a set of tyres before they start to fall off. And you're probably only going to fuel for about that anyway. So really light car, really quick tyres, but it almost plays against you in a way in that you have to be on the money.
Will Devonish has gone to the top of the timing tree, and for a little while it was looking like Kurt Stenberg was going to go pretty close to matching him there, but on the same lap that Stenny did his best lap just a few seconds ago, Will Devonish went faster and is now into a 58.6, which is staggeringly quick, and has 0.2 of a second over Stenberg and 3.5 tenths over Noah Turrer at the moment. So last man now to set a lap going to be Ben Hall. Hopefully this will be a lap for him, and it is. At least it's a time on the board. Currently 21st and last of the 22 of the 21 runners that are in the field, and he'll hopefully improve a little bit from there. But at the top of the timing sheets, 58.698 for Will Devonish. Very, very quick.
Yeah, so that's getting quite quick now at this point. And he's got a gap back to Will. Let me go and quickly check the live timing. He's got a gap back to Kurt of 2 tenths. Yeah, and then Noah's another 1.5 back, tenth and a bit back from there. Ryan Smith's still poking around. Actually, Foley's popped up a little bit as well. He's within that half-second margin to Will, which
there's identical times there for Smith and Foley
there is
as well.
Yeah, Smith and Foley, yeah. So technically, I think
fourth
hierarchy
digit
goes to Ryan, having said it first, but. Some identical times there as well. So that's a plus for any concerns of parity.
Yes, I agree with that. So out of the 21 cars that are here, the 15 of them have gone sub 1 minute at the moment. So the only ones outside of that, Lockie Lock, Darryl Callaghan, Bailey Hall, Steve Warwick, Ben Hall and Philip Boak. But they're not outside by much. There's only, in Boak's case, who's on screen now, he's only got to find 0.6 of a second and he'll be under the 60-second barrier. So he's taking a very wide line through the final corner there. That's a little bit wider than I would have thought, but he's done 2 personal bests in the first 2 sectors. And he's going to be, he lowers it by 4.5 tenths. So he can go again. He'll get another 2 laps in if he's got some tyres for it. But that does move him up the order. Callaghan's actually now just gone in with a 59.906, so that gets him under the 60-second barrier. He is a couple of positions up as actually Boak's pulling out of it. There is Callaghan in the Paint Doctor car. And towing around, I wouldn't say towing around, but their teammates running line stern here, Darryl Callaghan and Damon McDonald the faster of the 2 at the moment by about 1/10 of a second. I was actually expecting that margin to be a little bit bigger, Rody, because there was plenty of talk about this guy and his development series performance the other week, well actually last week it was, and how much he dominated the weekend by, and a lot of people threw around the P word pretty bloody quickly.
Yeah, it is early days, and to be fair, Damon did all of his racing last week, with only one functional hand to play with. I do know he was in the hospital today, probably for a checkup on said hand. So I don't know whether he actually has access to both hands or not. But potentially, he might be on a little bit of pain meds for whatever they did do to his hand. So he might not be with it. But also, he might not have had the chance to put any practice in. He was racing Opalas on Wednesday, which there were plenty of other guys racing Opalas on Wednesday, and they're doing fine. Will and Turmo being two of them. Maybe I think we're going to find for Damon, maybe it'll be a bit more race pace, maybe just a lack of practice means that qualifying has become his practice session.
Well, I was about to say, I was just keeping an eye on things. Kurt Stenberg was looking like he was going to try and have a late challenge at Will Devenish's time, but he had a little bit of a moment exiting the final corner, and that should keep Will Devenish safe. And yep, he's coming into the lane as well. So what about third place Ryan Smith? What's he up to? No, he's pulling out of it as well by the look of it. Tara is already in the lane. And Aiden Williams, good time as well. So remember, there was him and Brent Foley tied on time, I think it was, between the two of them. Ryan Smith.
Ryan and Foley, yeah.
So Ryan moved ahead by a little bit, and Aiden Williams jumped Foley as well. So good result from him, up into 5th place with Foley in 6th. Dostal, Egmanis, Daniel Cox. Been a while since we called Daniel Cox's name inside the top 10. And Ethan Knight rounding out the 10. So a couple of interesting ones there. And at the end of the day, Phil Boak, Bailey Hall, Steve Warwick and Ben Hall, the only 4 drivers not to break the 60-second barrier. But the slowest of them was only outside by about 3.5 tenths. So the field spread, 1.6 seconds. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot, but on a short layout, it's a lot.
Yeah, I was actually looking with that 10 as well. A good thing to look at as well. If we cast our eyes back to the back end of last year, Dev Series champion from last year, Brandon Dostal in 7th. Dev Series 4th place driver from last year, and I think he missed a couple of rounds, is Ethan Knight. He's in 10th. And then I think the next of those would be Spec down in 12th. So the class of the field from last year in Dev Series, they're doing a good job of making their mark in supercars this year, which is generally the idea. When promoting people from supercars, it's because their pace is sufficient that we'd kind of like them to get out of Dev Series. But ideally that they're able to convert some of that pace. It's harder in this year and last year because the cars are actually a little bit different as opposed to the last year, 2023 and prior, where there was really no difference between all 3 tiers of supercars in ASR. But even then, general car pace does allow them to convert pretty well. And yeah, Dostal in 7th, Ethan in 10th, and Specky's still floating around there as well. And obviously Ryan Smith actually was one I missed with that as well. But Ryan Smith, he was supercars last year and as well, but he also got the promotion, and he's up there, or he was up there in the top 5. So they're doing a really good job.
Yeah, I agree with you there. The development series drivers, that most of them inside the top 10 from last year, have done pretty well, and Damon McDonald and Darryl Callaghan, who are effectively doing double duty in both series this year. They're sort of, what are they? They were just outside the 10. I think they were in the mid-teens. So, there's plenty to be gained there, and plenty of time to be found. But they've got a whole season to get used to the Gen 3 machinery, and they did have a good run with the Gen 3 machinery. I think it's fair to say as well, Rody, because they did do the the Enduro last year at
yes.
Enduro Sandown and Bathurst. So they did race together. So they have got some familiarity with the Gen 3 cars. It's just going to be about just gelling with them over a longer period, because they do have a few little nuances and a few other things that have changed over the between the 2 classes. And this is typically where we see all sorts of things happen in practice. Most of the time, it's to do with starts, and everybody taking their time to come around and do a start. Now, there's a couple of different things we need to probably talk about this year. One of them concerns this car. Well, this car and its alter ego, I think we probably should put it down as, because this is effectively a Matt Stone-like Superlight entry this year. So Brap or Rory Collins will be in this car for handful of rounds, probably half a dozen rounds. I'm pretty sure it's a 50-50 split.
I think the aim is
or the aim is
50-50 on races, so we might not see a round even split, given there are some with 3, some with 2, some with 1. I know that Higo's been very keen to know how many races we're going to have next round at Surfers, and then how many we have in the international round, but we're still months away from it, and that's the information.
Yeah.
But I think the idea is to split it straight down the middle.
Yes, and it'll be round by round. You can't do race by race, so he's got a bit of a moment there for the starting cars. But yes, so there'll be a different set of livery for Nathan Higginson, who will spend some time in the 00 with the different colours, and some time for Rory Collins in this car with the 00 on as well. So there'll be different liveries to dictate different drivers. But suffice to say, at this stage, that's a driver or a car that will be split between drivers throughout the year. And that's a first for ASR as well. We've never had that sort of situation before. We've always had wildcard cars. We've always had drivers that have showed up and, you know, periodically jumped in whenever there's been a vacancy, and we still have that arrangement. But there has never been a scenario where a full-time entry on the grid has been shared between 2 drivers.
Yeah, it's the first officially sanctioned split entry for the series, and it's something different. It gives Higo, who's doing double duties, a bit of a chance to maybe focus a little bit more on Dev Series this year, while also allowing him to still, keep himself acclimatized with the Gen 3 cars, which obviously these are the cars he spent probably the best part of 2 years working on. So he kind of feels he's got a right to be out there having a crack with them. And for Rory, I think his appearance was a little bit spotty last year anyway, so it really sort of leans into suiting for him. I think generally the idea is that Higo's going to be around more or less every round, so it'll be Rory picks up what he can make, and Higo will fill in what's left. But it's sort of best of both worlds. The important thing is it keeps a car on the grid for the entire season, which is actually a little bit of a win over some of the full-time cars where, say, a driver will, for one reason or another, not be able to make a couple of rounds in a row. A good example was a couple of the Kiwi cars we missed last year because I think Snipes was off performing with his band. I think was some of the reasons we're missing him, and then I think it was Warriors Games as well was the reason we missed some of the Kiwi drivers. But the advantage of this is, even if one driver can't make it, there's a pretty good chance, or it's basically guaranteed, that the other one will be there. So we'll always have a 00 on the grid somewhere, or probably Rory up maybe towards the pointier end of it, and Higo, again, just where his familiarity and comfortableness with these cars, maybe a little bit further down towards the back end. But they'll always be out there.
Yeah, that's right. I know Brendan Ross in the chat has actually mentioned a big hello to him as well. Yes, he is still around. That yes, Lewis Wedding and Luke Rosella had somewhat of a similar arrangement last year, although that last year as well, it was officially deemed to be a substitute driver if the primary driver couldn't make it. And it just so happened that Lewis probably did a fair amount of the driving in that year because of Luke's commitment. So this one's, I guess, an official where there's no primary driver, but the rounds have actually been deliberately sort of split between the two, whereas in a situation with Luke and Lewis, it was if Luke couldn't make it, Lewis jumped in if he was available to do so.
Yeah.
So slightly different arrangement, but very, very similar. A couple of drivers now practicing the pit-in entry now. That's good to have that done just in case, but we are not anticipating any stops in the sprint race. As we said, the one thing you got to remember with the sprint racing this year is it is a 1x tyre instead of a 2x tyre. So the tyres will last, and I have heard that the fuel will last the whole entire sprint. It is, of course, a little bit longer than the sprint that we had in the development series last Friday night. So it's a 10k increase, and then the longer distance, whoops, as Ben Hall makes a bit of a boo-boo there, the longer distance race is a 20 kilometre increase compared to the development series. So 50 and 100 Ks if you're in the dev series, 60 and 120 in the main game. Right, clock is at 0. So that means we're not too far away. Drivers that are on some laps are allowed to finish them, but there's not much time left before we go racing for the first time in 2025 in the main game. Been looking forward to this. I was a little bit sort of, I wouldn't say lost over the off-season, but with a few other things that had sort of changed my life a little bit over the off-season roadie. It was interesting to sort of have to make the call that not to broadcast the development series this year, and I'm grateful that a few other guys have decided to pick that up and give it a crack, which is great. But I was sort of looking forward to this year in Maine, because I thought there would be an opportunity for a little bit of a readjustment at the top of the pecking order, purely because there was some really good quick guys coming out of Dev, and it was very interesting going to be interested to see what they could actually do.
Absolutely, and there's a few vacancies to worry about this year as well, as much as Luke Rosello's not back for this year, and he wasn't supposed to be, but Kurt Stenberg was very much tipped to be out for this year as well. But he is back tonight, and we will talk about that in not too long as to why he is here tonight and why he's running the livery he is running tonight. But yeah, he's one that he potentially won't be here the full season. We'll basically play that by ear and see how things go.
Yes, that's right.
But that's going to potentially provide a vacuum as well into who does take the title. Obviously, Will's the short price favourite, but as we've seen from qualifying, a few other drivers have popped up since.
Yes, that's right. And look, I think a few people were asking some commentators' opinions for this round, and who was likely to come out on top. I had sort of put it down to a 3-horse race with an outsider, but one of my 3 horses is a little bit further down the field than I otherwise would have thought based on their development series pace. So we'll wait and see if the night gets better for them or not. All 21 cars that are here tonight are on the grid. It is, of course, a 25-car entry list, but just the 21 here tonight with the 1 substitute driver. Rody, you know what to do.
Yep, so starting from pole is Will Devonish in the CRE Race Engineering number 15 with the Lifeblood sponsorship this year. Second is Kurt Stenberg for Anticol Autosports, running the number 1 this year after taking the title last year. He's running with backing from Kingsley's Chicken tonight. Third is Ryan Smith for the SES Spud division. This is the renaming of the team that he shared with Dane last year, so he's running with Middy's backing on the number 60. Fourth is Noah Taro for Series Amped Up Racing. He's teaming up with Lockie Lock again, running the Motul car he ran last year. Fifth is Aidan Williams, running one of 2 Valvoline liveries on the grid, this one painted by Daniel Cox for AF Racing. Sixth is Brenton Foley, the lead of the 2 PBF Engineering Commodores. They've had a slight change, you see a bit of purple in their cars this year. Seventh is Brandon Dostal, running the Pepsi Max sort of tribute throwback on the Liquid Cube Racing by SES number 76. Eighth is Kosik Mines in the other Valvoline car. This is Series Engineering, so good luck telling them apart from the front. Ninth is Daniel Cox, running a bit of a sticker bomb livery for the first round, and I think the next couple of rounds, something different. This will stand out. Sydney Motorsport. 10th is Ethan Knight, the second Liquid Cube by SES cars. 11th is Luke Newing in one of the first brown cars I've seen in a while. This one almost works, but we'll talk about that a little while later. 12th is his teammate in Luke Speck, so they make up the SES Shogun pairing in Camaros this year rather than Mustangs. 13th is Cam Rutledge, the second of the series Anson Motorsport drivers, running a bit of a throwback to the 2018-2019 liveries he used to run. 14th is Damon McDonald, running basically the same livery runs in the Dev series for Liquid Q Racing, number 59, the pink Monster Energy car. 15th is Rory Collins, running for PBF by SES with Sun Energy backing. 16th is Daryl Callahan, Liquid Q Racing number 6 with Paint Doctor on the doors. 17th is Lockie Lock with his own branding on the doors for Theory Amped Up Racing. 18th is Phil Boak. 19th is Bailey Hall. 20th is Steve Warwick. And 21st is Ben Hall filling in for Darren Lockett.
Certainly is, and if you are in ASR in 2025, get on board, ladies and gentlemen, because here we are for the start of the season. And, well, I guess it's almost customary, isn't it, Rody, because we've been akin to calling this for years and years and years. Will Devonish off the start line. What on earth do we say? He coughs it up straight away to the number 1, Kurt Stenberg.
Yeah, made that a bit too easy for Kurt. I think Kurt was expecting a fight there. He just got it handed to him on a silver platter. And not only that is he being given the lead, he's been given a gap of about a second. And Will's effectively playing tail gunner for him right now. Will's trying to cover him. See somebody wide off in the background. It wasn't Noah Taro, it was one of the blue cars. But otherwise, I think they've done a pretty good job of getting through the first sector of this lap. Great
stuff for Brenton Foley as well. He's gained 3 spots after starting 6th, and he's actually harassing the back of the CRE number 15 Mustang as well. I think it might have, there was a couple of cars that you said were very, very wide coming out of the last couple of corners. I think it might have been Damon McDonald who was the one that was the widest of them all, because he's dropped to the tail of this field.
Yeah, Damon McDonald, or I don't know as well, Steve Warwick down the order as well. So a few guys a little wide, maybe just not having the tyre temp to play with. Yeah, Will very much seemingly playing tail gunner for Kurt at this point because he's not making too many moves on trying to get up to Kurt, but Foley's just sitting there sniffing. He'd probably play ball a little bit Foley if he'd sat back and let Will go, but maybe there's going to be a change of running order here, but maybe not. So look, they're fighting for second, but the more they fight for second, the harder it's going to be for either of them to get up to first place.
There's a fight for fourth and fifth as well. Tara had a little bit of a look at Aiden Williams, who's gained a spot. Tara's gone backwards one at the beginning of this, and Ryan Smith as well. He's lost a couple of spots too in Foley's little early charge up the grid from the start. So already plenty of action going on, and this is, as we said, it is a full-on sprint race. There's no ifs, buts or maybes about it. Tyres, not an issue. Fuel, not an issue. Just get in the car, strap in, put your foot to the floor and go. This is what the drivers wanted after the experiment last year. Sort of led a few drivers to consider whether they were going to come back this year, but it has been a bit of a success story in the development series with the way the tyre behaved and how it held up over the 50k sprint, and so it has it's proven quite well, and it's been retained for the supercars as well. Looks like it's going to deliver some good racing, but we will wait and see how all that unfolds. Get back in the pack here, 3 Mustangs in a row. Darryl Callaghan now the lead car of the Luke McHugh Racing stable. The number 6, the Paint Doctor car, is substantially faster at the moment and substantially well ahead of his more fancied teammate Damon McDonald, but he's under pressure here from Rory Collins.
Yeah, so good bit of fight out of Rory. He's made up one spot as well. Most of these cars in this track actually have made up spots just by keeping on the road essentially, and Bailey Hall also popping in there as well. He'll be easy to spot this year and probably one of the brightest cars we've seen in the last little while. He's just had a move put on him, though, by Brandon Dostal. Fastest lap there for Aiden Williams, who's sitting in the toe of, I think, Foley at this point, so he's managed to go quicker than Kurt that lap through. Yeah,
he certainly is. He's right in the wheel tracks of Foley. He might just have a little bit of a look down here at turn 2. He's got Purchase alongside Foley. I wasn't sure if Foley was going to close the door there. There was a little bit of contact, and that's now taken Foley away from Will Devonish, so gives him a little reprieve. Williams now gets backed into Noah Turra and Smith, and then you've got Egmanis in there as well. So very quickly, a battle that was over 2 spots has now become a battle over 5.
Yeah, Toma's in a good spot, or at least he was for a little while there. He was back far enough off this train that if something happened, he could easily take advantage, but he's now really bought into this. Noah's backed up a little bit just to do a poor run through the chicane, which has put him right onto Ryan's front bumper. Which has then put Egmanis into the back of that train as well. So a little battle over 3. Williams is back having a crack again at Foley. He'll probably try and do a better job than the last lap through. Good on Williams, though. We saw the error of his ways and redressed that immediately, so there's no advantage taken directly on his part, but did obviously lose Foley contact with Will. What this might mean for Will is that Will's now got free air. He might actually be able to go and have a crack at Kurt.
We'll soon find out. Williams, I think he's just very strong in the final sector, I think, because he was... you said he was right on the back of Foley then, and the 2 of these guys have now been able to quickly pull away from the drivers that were right on their hammer after making that little sequence of mistakes. And just having a look here, their last sectors are 24 3s and 24 4s. It's actually the middle sector. Looks like it actually is the quicker of the sectors for those 2 versus the cars behind. Foley just opening up the margin ever so slightly, and Williams might get a little bit of a toe, but then Foley's just had a little moment off the final corner there, so a little bit of that hard work just becomes undone, and it's back to a 5-car train again.
Yeah, it's the ebb and the flows, and that middle chicane really is probably, it's almost a choke point in a way, just because it's such an awkward set of corners to go through. The elevation is really weird for a set of corners on a racetrack, and it's sort of by nature of just what everything else is in the area that goes up and down the way it does. But there is one line through there. It's sometimes really hard to pick. There's steep curbs either side. There's the hump in the middle as well. I think it was Collins in the qualifying session, or maybe the warm-up, completely the wrong line to get airborne through that section. It's really the good opportunity, and if you're at the head of a train, it's a good chance with a bit of a gap to try and get a clean run through. If you're right up someone's clacker, it's probably the really worst corner to go through on the track, because you cannot sight at all where you need to be on track, and as I mentioned, once you're offline there, you're losing probably 2 or 3 tenths through the corner, and obviously losing time then down straight to the last complex as well.
Speaking of being up someone's clacker, you've got the Dare Ice Coffee entry here of Luke Mewing right up the clacker on a couple of occasions of Daniel Cox. I'll tell you what, Rody, you mentioned just a few minutes ago that this is the first brown car you've seen in a very, very long time, and I agree with you. I hadn't seen one, and you're right, I actually reckon this livery works.
Yeah, I think the only part that I find a bit interesting is a yellow flag for
turn one.
Foley.
Yeah, Brenton Foley. So something's happened to him. We will come back to that in a few seconds, but yeah, where is Brenton Foley in all of this? Yeah, he's just coming. He's come back.
Now.
Yeah, he's now 14th and coming back onto the circuit. That will give us an opportunity to have a look at the Paint Doctor replay for the first time in season 2025. Let's have a bit of a look here. So he was on the outside. Oh, bit of contact from Noah Turra in the braking zone. So not on his own.
Yeah, I think Noah's just trying to get a pass on, or maybe trying to get alongside Aidan Williams, and didn't realise that Foley was still there on the outside. And yeah, that was unfortunate. It's tipped Foley right into the deepest of the gravel trap, which is why it's taken him that long to get out. And he's, as I said, now out in 14th, and he's got a couple of gaps. Actually, he's dropped back to the back of this train with it was some of the other cars we talked about earlier, but they've gone their ways, and now it's Cam Rutledge, Daryl Callahan, and Brandon Dostal in that train for 11th. And
Dostal's making his way forward as well after having a pretty decent qualifying. You see there, he started in 7th place, and now he's running in 11th. So he actually might have been one of the cars involved in an early skirmish at this part of the track on lap 1. And is now making his way back through the field. So this is actually, it's quite a mature drive, I think, from him at the moment, just to advance forward. Don't forget, it's not a progressive grid to the next race. It is a separate qualifying session for the longer layout. So all is not lost. He has got plenty of time to qualify well again and get back up to a reasonable starting position on the grid for race 2. And now it's just about salvaging as many points as you can from this one.
Absolutely, yeah, just having a cut through the field some of the trains. There are a few drivers in that position as well that will be really happy. Damon McDonald is obviously making his way back up through the field. He's apparently trying to put a move on Ben Hall at turn 1, and Ben's been pretty accommodating of it, so that's helped him out.
I was about to say Ben had actually been the sort of the beneficiary, part of the punt, of a lot of people that had fallen down the field, and there's actually up 5 places after starting plumb last, and now just losing one of those to Damon McDonald, who is on the recovery part through the field. Ooh, what was Rory Collins doing a bit wide there on the circuit behind Phil Boak?
Not sure. He was ahead last time I looked, and then he's dropped behind in the back, so maybe just catching a slide or something. Oh, somebody's around. Daryl Callahan off after the chicane.
Yep,
so.
there he is in the back there. So that means he's now behind his teammate, and he is now officially the last car on the field. So what happens to the Paint Doctor number 6? He'll do this all on his own, coming out of the chicane. Very easy thing to do. Coming out of here, apply too much throttle, and yep, applied a bit too much throttle and just lost the back.
Yeah, it's not easy to do. Just the way the car, the way the elevation, it's gentle elevation in so much as, but it still pitches your car around in some really weird things with where you expect the grip to be, and it's very easy then to be off camber and spin it around like that.
I'm wondering if he's got a puncture too, because he's very slow on the front straight, and I think he may have had another issue. Bailey Hall has now dropped behind Daryl Callahan. Yeah, he's got a front left puncture. So
yeah, he's going
to be limping this around now. So there's not a good opening stanza to your ASR careers. You're going to make the fence. Usually you make the grass, you make the fence, as Mark Scaife says, and he did make the fence. Now, where's Bailey Hall? What's happened to Bailey?
Oh, so he's... Oh, okay, so this explains the puncture.
All right, so we're going to get a little bit of a replay here, I think, as the field keeps coming through. I'm looking at what's happened to Bailey here. We're having to wind this back, so apologies, everybody. Here we go. We're winding this one on now. So Hall has had a moment. Oh, yeah, that's a good old tank slapper moment. Oh, yeah, and, got to hold the brake. I got to hold the brake.
I think in Bailey's case as well, he's picked up a puncture. He's now parked up at the outside of 1, letting some cars through. But I think he picked up a puncture and all that as well, because he looped it trying to get through turn 1, and obviously looped it again to be on the outside of turn 1 where he is. But he's going to go a couple laps down, probably 2 laps down, I think, as things go through. And Daryl's still struggling around as well. He's going to be lucky to stay on the lead lap. Actually, just noticed another error as well from someone, but Cam Rutledge is slow when one of the SES Shogun cars was backwards.
I'm wondering if he's trying to redress a spot there. We haven't got. I just saw him off camera and whether or not he's he's actually, I think, trying to redress some positions. There he is, pottering around the outside of the turn there, and I don't know who he's waiting for.
No, I suspect he's got
he's come
damage.
for the pits, or damage into the pits for him. So, bit of an odd one there. As you said, bit of a throwback livery to the ZB Commodores. I'm trying to scratch my brain now to work this out. I'm gonna go out on a limb, Rody, and say it was his 2019 series car. I think it was.
2019, and he did run this livery in, I think, 2018 as well. But most notably, this was the 2019 livery that he and Will ran under CRE and CRE Pro, I think, and CRE Pro-Am back when we had those divisions in the Supercars group.
You've got, I think there's that Luke Speck coming in there as well.
That is Speck as well. So he was the other car that was involved in the contact that Cam had. He'd actually already had an error. I'm not sure whether he was assisted, but he was backwards long before Cam got on the scene. Yep. So I don't know what's happened to Speck, but damage for him as well. See Callahan's in with damage. I suspect Bailey's on his way in as well. So a few victims. Look, we mentioned it earlier, and we all led into it. A few drivers are very happy that this isn't a progressive grid.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And if we look at our pallet control solutions race facts as well, you can see it's a very, very short sprint, 2.8 kilometre circuit, so it goes really, really fast. Pit stops, of course, are optional, and if you do your fuel math there, you can see that with the 130 litre Gen 3, 112, 130 litre Gen 3 tank, it of course makes it quite comfortably. And as we said, it's a soft tyre compound, but it's at ×1, which means that you can go for a full-on sprint race around this 2.8 kilometre circuit. So, focusing in on a couple of battles here. This one is the battle over the last spot on the rostrum. Aidan Williams being pursued by Ryan Smith. This is a good little scrap here. I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't expecting Williams to be up this high, but he's definitely been doing a bit of practice over the last couple of weeks. I think he's a bit wide there at turn number 1. This might make him vulnerable at 2, and that draws Smith alongside. That might be the invitation that he needs. And he's got plenty of room alongside here, and Williams leaves him the space. Going to put him on the wrong side for turn 3, but can Williams hang on, or does he concede? He hangs on. He's going to make it go the right way or the long way around. The next corner goes left, though, so ahead is the Middies car, and ahead the Middies car stays.
Yeah,
well
so
done.
That was very well done by the pair of them to give each other room. Very well done by Ryan to stick with it on the outside, because that's the easy way to get it. That's the way to get the pass done through that complex, is to treat it as one big overtaking zone. You get alongside in 2, you hang around the outside for 3, and you get to move on through 4, 5.
Yeah. So
very well done by Ryan. But look, 2 drivers I did not expect to see quite this far up the pointy end at this end of the season. Williams with his slightly spotty appearance last year and generally not quite being on the pace, but then Ryan Smith as well. He's quick, but I think he's still pretty insistent that he's one of the drivers that maybe should go back to Dev Series. Based off of this pace, I beg to differ.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I say to that.
Yeah.
So he's definitely got front running, not so much front running pace, but he's definitely got top 5 pace written all over him, and he's doing a good job now. And now Tara's starting to claw onto the back of the battle as well. The other interesting one is this margin between the leaders was out to 2 seconds in the first 7 or 8 laps. It is now about half a second between Stenberg and Devonish, and there's still a lot of laps on the board. We're 15 laps into a 22-lap race, so do the math, ladies and gentlemen. This is not over and done with by any stretch of the imagination for the win.
Absolutely, and I think while we're looking at it, I can quickly talk as to why he's running the car he's running and why he's here this season, or at least why he's here tonight. As things currently sit, Kurt Stenberg is 1 win behind Luke Rosella in the all-time Supercars win roster for ASR. They're good mates, they're also very good rivals, and Kurt's entire focus this year, well, at least with this livery, he's here to hopefully win the 2 races tonight and put himself ahead of Luke Rosella on the scoreboard. I think after that he can probably claim that he's done all he wants to do. He's already got a champion. I think he's won Bathurst. He's basically done all he needs to do within the league, but that's his one last sort of claim to fame. One last thing he wants to have his name attached to is he wants to beat Luke Rosella and have the most wins in ASR Supercars. He's 1 behind, and he's got 2 races to try and beat that tonight.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. That's part of the reason why he's there, or why he's here tonight. But he's going to be made to work, I think, for these ones. It was looking okay for him about sort of 10 minutes ago, and now it's not going to be easy. And well, these 2 have come to blows before, not to preempt the inevitable or anything, but they have had some absolute hair-raising exchanges over the course of time. There's our first drive-through penalty issued by Race Control for the night for Ethan Knight, and that one is going to be for track limits at turn number 4, which these two are coming up to in the next few seconds or so. So we'll point out exactly where that is. It's not this turn here, which is turn 3. It's the left-hander here at turn 4. It'll be for taking too much curb there. You get a little bit too much, you get a bit too greedy. The stewards deemed to have cut the track, and they give you a slap on the wrist.
Yeah, so he's going to be, I think, the 7th or 8th person on that list now who has to take to the pit lane for one reason or another this race, and he'll join the cluster of cars that's a lap or more down that was recently added to by Cam Rutledge. Yep. I think he's been through the pits, so he's down a lap now.
There he is.
So it's, so there is a 6 or 7 cars now, and Ethan Knight will become another one to that list.
Here we go.
Steve Warwick with the last one, the lead lap now.
Here we go. Noah Tara has managed to do the impossible and go around the outside, it looks like, of Ryan Smith at the final corner and wrestle P3 away. This is a heavyweight slugfest. I tell you what, for P3 on the rostrum, Smith's now going to turn the favour around and go the long way around turn 1. Williams is looking for the inside for turn 2, and somehow they managed to put that on ice for all of about 5 seconds before they start resuming again. Igmanis is starting to loom big, I think, in the mirrors of the Valvoline number 95. Don't rule him out of maybe being a Stephen Bradbury if this all comes to tears in the final few laps.
Absolutely. The way these guys are going, at least, look, credit to Aiden. He's a couple of times already he's shown that maybe not for the moment, but he's able to sit there and think through a decision, go, hang on, this maybe not work. He showed the nose at turn 2 and went, hang on, 3 wide won't work here. I'm going to back out of this. He's letting them fight now, and it's a sort of mirror cap go flying off of. A few mirror caps have gone flying. I think all these cars are missing a mirror cap as things are going right now, so they've been racing pretty hard. Now they're going 3 wide. 3 wide into 1 doesn't work.
No, it does not work. And who comes out with the high gain here? Usually it's someone that's on the racing line. Oh, that was very close. And Williams is going to pick the pocket of Ryan Smith here at turn 1, and he'll be in position for turn 2. So he wins that little battle, at least for the next few seconds. And Igmanis is, Tara's wide, and the 95 gets spun. There you go. It was about to happen. Igmanis gets a spot. That something was going to come to blows there, and unfortunately, Williams is the victim. And I tell you what, I think probably innocently the victim.
Yeah, I don't think he classed as a dangerous rejoin, because I don't think at any point Noah actually left the track. He just pinched a brake and hung it wide, cut back down, and basically just cut into where Adam Williams was, and just with where the contact was, it just picked the car up and spun it around. So
here we go.
Through no fault of his own, Williams is down to the back of the field now. Yeah,
he is. Here we go. I tell you what, Devonish had a really good run off the final corner, and Kurt was a little bit sideways at turn 8. That gave the number 15 Mustang a bit of a look at turn number 1. He just didn't have enough real estate alongside the number 1 Camaro to really command the position into turn number 1, but he's applying the pressure as they head on through the halfway point of the 20th lap. But Kurt's starting to feel the pressure, but he's still driving very, very well at the moment. He's just made a little mistake here, a little mistake there, but it's not been enough for Devonish to capitalise. Now, this is obviously the right-hand side tyres take most of the punishment here, so traction out of this corner is the important one. See, now Will's turn to have a little bit of a slide job, but Kurt did it as well there. 2 to run, and again, still not over and done with the first and second, not over and done with the third, fourth and fifth either. We're watching both battles on 2 screens at the moment. It's absolutely amazing how everything is unfolding.
Absolutely, yeah. Will is still hunting Kurt, but it's probably going to wait for the last lap to get anything done. Meanwhile, Ryan Smith now through on Noah Tara with a bit of contact at the rear. That was very nearly a sideways 60 at the exit of turn 1.
There certainly was. Aiden Williams has recovered to 7th place, just in between Newing and Brent Foley. Luke Newing's gone along really, really quietly in this. He's the big quiet achiever out of all of that, up to 6th place with all the drive-throughs and the pit stops and bits and pieces going on and people getting spun out. So good result for the SCS Shogun Camaro on team debut this weekend. I know he raced in the series last year, but he's definitely put some really nice points on the board. Well, the leaders are about to start the final lap, and the margin is 0.4 of a second. That's pretty much what it's been for the majority of the last couple of laps. This will be probably the last chance Devonish gets to have a look here. Down at turn 2, not close enough. Then probably at turn 4, because I don't think he's going to get much of a run down towards the last sequence of corner stuff. Kurt holds through here and doesn't make a critical mistake off the final corner. I think he will chalk up at least another one of those wins. There's going to be another spot for somebody. That'll be for Steve Warwick, because Rory Collins is just ahead of him by a couple of seconds, and another penalty for track infringements has been issued. And it looks like the Kingsley's Chicken number 1 has just got a corner to go, and then he will get that win that puts him level with Luke Rosella, and no mistake, and driving to the line. First and second looked like it was going to be a decent battle till the flag, but all well and good, and Stenberg gets the win here, head of Devonish. I'll tell you what though, I did say don't rule this man out for a podium if it all came to blows, and lucky me down, he's got third place, Curtis Igbanis.
Yeah, it's the first time he's been on the podium in a little while, so good to see Tomo up there. And I caught the back end of it flicking through the cars. It was very much a case of everybody else fell off in front of him. I think might have been assistance from Noah Tara somewhere in there, but the battle he was having with Ryan Smith was pretty energetic. In the end, yeah, Tomo was there and he kept it on the track. So one of a few drivers to benefit from doing exactly that. Fourth was Ryan Smith. Fifth was
not happy
Noah
with
Tara.
Noah Tara as well as Ryan Smith.
No, but in the background of that shot as well, number 6, Luke Newing.
Absolutely.
Again, another driver that just did what he needed to, stayed on track. Aidan Williams recovering to 7th. Foley recovering back to 8th. Daniel Cox actually held positions, finishing 9th. And Lockie Lock, I just caught bits of that battle they were having, and there was mirrors going everywhere, but he managed to be the lead of that little train of cars. That was Brandon Dostal, that was one of the Halls, and ended up finishing as the last car in the top 10.
Brandon Dostal 11th with Ben Hall. Ben Hall, biggest mover of the race, 9 places gained. Now that's using your head, I think, as well, from starting absolutely last and just keeping your head when everyone around you was losing theirs. He finishes 12th. Dane McDonald recovered to 13th. Boat 14th, and then Steve Warwick, he gained 5 spots out of all of that, and then all the drivers that had some form of issue or another, Rory Collins, Ethan Knight, they both had penalties, and then the guys that were in the pit lane, Cam Rutledge, Darryl Callaghan, Luke Speck and Bailey Hall after all of that as well. So frenetic race. That is what sprint racing is supposed to be. That's exactly what the drivers ordered. Don't worry about the pit stops, just worry about the racing. And tell you what, it has delivered. So what a start to season 2025. And now we have the pause, because there's going to be a little bit of a warm-up session. I guess they're going to get the better part of 15 or 20 minutes to do some laps on the longer layout, just to get acclimatized before we dive into the second set of qualifying and race of the evening, Rody.
Yeah, so it's a one-off for this year, and I suppose a one-off for ASR as a whole, because we're running the 2 different tracks. We want to give the drivers won't say be the equivalent to what they've had for prep for the first race tonight, but give them enough time to actually get acclimatized to the track. So they're going to get 20 minutes. I know that the guys in Dev Series spent 20 minutes trying to fill it with a varying degrees of successful interviews. I don't think we're necessarily going to go the same route. We'll probably do the usual, and we'll wait till after race 2 to bring some drivers up. But yeah, we've got 20 odd minutes to fill once the session ticks over. We'll probably talk about what's happening on track, but also got an opportunity to talk about what happened last week in Dev Series, given that for the first time in a while, Nether and I were both there driving in it.
Yeah, that's the interesting part of that as well. Yes, both of you and I were there, and it was a little bit of mixed fortunes. I can't remember where I finished, but I think you've got all the standings and bits and pieces there. That you'll be able to tell me exactly what's going on. We'll just give a few minutes here just for everybody to get themselves sorted. Now, the reminder has gone out that it is a case of you will have a handful of minutes practice to get acclimatized with the circuit before everything goes into qualifying, and we're just getting everybody turned around and ready to run for that, so we can have a chat. big thank you to everybody tuning in on the live stream as well. I know I've been doing this for the better part of 7 or 8 years now, but this year has been a bit of a difficult challenge with a few challenges going on in my life personally, and that's why there hasn't been a lot of effort put into changing any of the broadcast content for this year, apart from the necessary. I mean, some people say if it works, don't change it, but there's always room for bits and pieces of improvement. So it's just one of those things, just plumb purely and simply not having enough time on the board to do that sort of stuff. So
Absolutely.
practice is now officially underway, and with that, we've got a couple of cars that are starting to take to the track already. So Ethan Knight being the first one of those. So there's really going to be sort of no real method to the madness of how we want to run this session. It's just a simple case of the layout's there. If you want to practice, go ahead and do some practice. If you don't want to do some practice, then that's okay. You can stay in the pits and go and stick your finger up your bum or something. We really don't care what you do if you're sitting in the pits. If that's your forte, you can go and do that, or you can stand there and suck your thumb, or whatever you want to do. But the opportunity is there to give people the chance to acclimatise, because let's put it this way, I fully expect if someone that sits in the pits the whole entire 20 minutes doesn't do any practice, they will go left at turn 4.
Yes,
I would almost guarantee it.
Yeah, I'm waiting for to see that in qualifying. Somebody starts to turn in and go, oh, hang on, why are there cones there? Yeah, we saw it in Dev Series, and it's something you don't quite. It's something that we've never had to think about as drivers, because we don't change formats midway through a night. It never happens. It very rarely happens, I think, IRL, if ever. So it's never something you've had to consider the possibility of, right, all this work I've done for the past hour and a half, chuck it in the bin, start again. You never had to do that halfway through a night. So yeah, I would hope some drivers get out there, but if you're not out there doing some practice, I mean, you could just get a drink, could be having a snack, could be coming in and sitting and watching the broadcast for 20 minutes just to tide the time away. Yeah, you do you.
Yeah. Now, to give you an idea of how long the 120 kilometre race is going to take, the 100k race for the development series around this same layout took a little over 40 minutes to complete. Now we're going to bolt another 20k's onto that, so with a circuit that's nearly 4 kilometres in length, you can do the math and say, yep, there's another 5 laps in there. At about 1.5 minutes a lap, you can roughly say, well, it's going to probably take somewhere in the realms of about 48 to 50 minutes to actually do the race. So it's a decent run. You've had your 22 to 24 minute sprint race, which is is not too bad for some of these drivers. They would have appreciated going flat out for 20 odd minutes. But to go endurance for double that now, that's the real challenge, isn't it? And part of the circuit that we're about to tackle does reward a bit of patience. So once you turn right at turn number 4 and then head through 5 and then down to 6, that's sort of the narrowest part of the circuit, because there's only real one passing opportunity, and that's down at turn 6. Turn 8's a little bit of a different type of a corner, but you can pass there. But a lot of the time, it is just sort of a train that's running through that part of the track. So it does reward a bit of patience. If after coming out of a sprint race, you've got to taper your mind from that sprint race mentality to a patience type of mentality.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's going to be a bit of a change as well. Is that you've got to think big picture now for race 2, which. That's not the only time you're doing it this season. Some are going even longer than this again. But yeah, definitely just a change in mindset. If as I said, taking everything, dumping in the bin, because track's different, your approach to the track is different. Obviously, the race length is different, so your strategy is going to be different, and how you want to race people is going to be different, because it's not 15, 20 minutes until the end of the race. It's 40 odd minutes plus to the end of the race. You don't have to make the move right there and then, and there's even less immediacy to make that move right there and then. The other thing as well that potentially is going to come into it, and I'm not saying anyone's going to go out there and try and settle a score from race 1, but if you're out there rubbing elbows with somebody in race 1, a good chance I might remember it come race 2. So something else to consider as well, depending where you qualify. For example, I'm not saying there's necessarily going to be a problem with it, but I know that there's probably going to be some energy between Noah Tara and Ryan Smith after that first race. So if they qualify near each other again and start near each other again, look, they've got another 20 laps that they didn't have last time to try and suss out some emotion there. how they choose to do that is up to them. We have not historically, but I think like the last time we did, the last time we raced on this layout of SMP with supercars, it wasn't the best night for a couple of the drivers. It was a bit of a kerfuffle, all things considered. So, I'm not saying it's going to happen again. SMP usually is in a proper track. But that said, I think the general consensus for SMP in its traditional layout is either you like it or you don't.
Yes.
It's very much a black or white kind of a track.
Yeah, that's right. And I know that you're bringing up old wounds here as well, Rhodey. There's a few people in the chat that are probably watching this and are going to watch it back a bit later and just think, oh, please, Rhodey, don't mention SMP from last year. But you have. Just having a look back to the development series race last week, just to give you an idea of the differences in some things. So, the pole position for both races went the way of Damon McDonald. His fastest lap was about 3.5 tenths quicker than what the Gen 3 car pole lap was tonight to Will Devonish. So that's it's not a huge gap, but does show that the differences of the two cars. The pole lap for Damon McDonald on the SMP Gardner layout a week ago, a 1 minute 27.7, and that was a half a second quicker than the nearest driver, Darren Logden, which was, I was even surprised that he went that quick, and even Logden went that quick. I thought it was going to be the likes of, your Ethan Knights and those sort of guys that would be a little bit closer to up the field, but no, that was a bit of a change that we weren't quite used to. And then we go back to the race result. The race result, I think, is the one on this layout that really surprised me. McDonald won by 12.5 seconds over the course of 26 laps, so it's 5 laps less than what the distance is going to be tonight. And that's with a pit stop as well. So 12.5 seconds, that's a decent victory.
Yeah, he basically, I can't remember the exact definitive of what happened because, to be fair, I was nowhere near him for most of the race. But in watching the broadcast back, and I will say, actually, if you want some more info on what happened, it's a bit of a watch. It's a full race broadcast, but it is still being broadcast this year. The channel is On The Edge, and it's Brandon Dostal and Rory Collins and Ryan Smith on the mic for round one. They are going to have a bit of a revolving format just based on availability. And it's to be completely transparent, and they'll admit it, they're not the quality that Nether and I have been putting out. But Nether and I have been doing this, Nether mentioned, he's been here for 8 years. I think I've been in this seat for probably my 4th year now. This was their very first broadcast last week as a 3-pair. So
everybody's got to start somewhere, right?
Exactly, they've got to start somewhere. The important thing is the race has been covered, and they're talking about the racing, and really that's what you need from a broadcast. But that's a good place to go and look if you want some more info and to walk into the minutiae of the detail of what happened. But yeah, perfect Friday night for Damon McDonald and for Darren Logden. They did the best you could do as a team pairing, with Damon picking up 2 wins, Darren picking up 2 seconds. So they've got the most points you can earn as a team for a round. They've done a better job than Will and Termo did in race 1 with 2 and 3. Higo, a bit of a surprise, but also not. Higo's had pace in Gen 2 machinery, and it's just we haven't been able to see much of it last year because we weren't in Gen 2 machinery for Higo, and he's up promoted supercars. But he very nearly, and I can give him a little bit of shit about it because he'd give me a bit of shit about my stance in it as well. But he almost won himself a title a few years back in Super 2. So he's got the pace for these cars. So it's no surprise that he's in 3rd. Logden being quicker is, I think, maybe a little bit of a surprise, but Darren's got some pace, and Damon, well, yeah, P-Word's been around for him already, and that was with 1 functional hand. So you give him a second hand, and you might go a couple of seconds quicker again over the course of a race. But out of the weekend overall, 4th went to Jacob Palfrey. Pretty good for Palfrey, actually. He didn't end up qualifying for race 1. He missed qualifying. So he fought all the way to 7th in race 1. So big mover there. It was a near 20-odd car grid. So great work to get all the way back up to 7th, and then a 4th in race 2. Darryl Callahan in 5th place as well, so obviously he's doing the double duty again this year, but he's got familiarity with the cars as well. Angus Brown in 6th, Darren Kemp in 7th. The lead Super 3 car, and actually the lead Holden on the grid, is Cracker or Michael McDonald in 8th. He picked up a pair of 9ths, and he and I had some good running in the top 10 in race 1.
He actually drove really well, I must admit, Rhodey. He was the big surprise for me. that he did as well as he did, and he was very, very comfortable on both the layouts. Like I must take my hat off to him. Something must have clicked with him over the off season, because he was on it.
Absolutely, yeah. It'd be interesting to see how he goes, because I haven't necessarily informed him any more information than we have previous years. It's not like we sat down and done a whole bunch of big practice runs or anything. It's just he just strapped into the car on last Friday and it was just quick on both sessions. So that's good to see. The only blemish thing for him was qualifying. Qualified 14th of race 2, but he held on. He was spending most of race 2 battling with Alex Kiddis. To round out the top 10, Pete Thrower in 9th. He had a bit of a blue in race 1, finished 13th, but otherwise he'll be around the pointy end of the field this year. And Adam Kerrison, who's second in Super 3, running for Tassie Devil Virtual Sports. He's actually got a teammate this year in Brian Walsh. They're both the Taswegians have teamed up for 2025. He's sitting 10th and second in Super 3. And actually the first ZB isn't until 11th for Steve Warwick. He had a pretty good race 1, but ended up 17th in race 2. He got spat off pretty early and kind of ended up running around at the back by himself for a lot of that. But no, it was good racing, and it was good to sort of get an idea on where some people would fall. It doesn't necessarily directly inform the way it has, I say previous years, the way it had up until 2023, because the cars aren't the same anymore. Track familiarity and being good at a track can play, but also if the car just does not do what you want it to do, that plays a difference as well. The other thing as well that we're going to see this year for Dev Series, which I think was talked about a little bit in their broadcast, but if it hasn't, it probably will be for next round now that I've made the point, some of the guys are watching this one back. There is more setup options available for Dev Series for this year. There is actually a recommended setup for each round now that Will Devonish and Luke Specker put together. But there is generally more setup options available, which for those drivers that want to lean into that stuff, especially for those that are looking to make the move up to or are going to be moved up to supercars either during the season or at the end of the year, that's a good opportunity, a good extra little toe in the water that they get to have to what supercars is, because supercars is basically full open setups. If you want to be quick in supercars, either having someone you know how to set up a car or being able to set up a car yourself is probably, 5-6 of the argument. Having innate pace as a driver is in there as well. But this will help the guys out, and opportunity for some of the guys. It's a bit of a different story at the other end of the field, sort of, I suppose, where you and I are at in Super 3. None of us are really looking at supercars running. I know you and I did it last year, but that was in Enduro Cup is very much a different story to a full-time campaign. The open setup is providing some more challenges for those guys. And look, credit to some of the guys, they're trying something different as well. I will make mention of it, and it's made me mention of it before, but credit to Glenn Miles, who's been running around towards the back of Super 3 and has for the last couple of years, but he's out there having a run, and more importantly, he's getting some good points because he makes an effort to finish every race he can. He's taken the step this year of turning off traction control and turning off ABS, which credit, because I've been racing supercars since, well, actually about as long as Glenn's been racing supercars, and I still run with low ABS where it's available. So credit to Glenn for switching ABS off and going, going, it's a term I wanted to use, I can't remember what it is now. But yeah, to turn all the assists off and to drive the cars as you would actually is really good for Glenn. And look, we might see a turn of pace for Glenn in so much as he's driving the cars in a raw way that some of us aren't, especially in Super 3.
That's right. And look, I had to get used to that when I decided to pair with Higo for Bathurst. I'd not done a lot of laps with the ABS off, but, found a way to sort of adapt to it, at least for the time that I was in the car. And look, even I don't use all the assists, I only use the low ABS, but it's one of those things that you just need to spend the time to wean yourself off it. For me, time's a little bit of an issue. So I just don't have enough time to sit down and actually practice with it. And of course, seat time for me over the last several years has been a little bit of a problem. Speaking of seat time, the drivers are going to get plenty of it over the next couple of weeks, because with Cyclone Alfred, which of course caused a little bit of havoc up north for a few drivers, we decided to push the development series round back a week, which then in turn pushed the Supercars round back a week, which is why this is being broadcasted this week and not last week. But it does mean that the next 2 weeks, drivers are racing round 2 because the 1 week gap has been taken away. So that means next week it is a pair of 90 kilometre races for the development series, and the week after that, April 4th, it will be a pair of 100 kilometre races around the Surfers Paradise Street Circuit, aka Gold Coast, aka Chaos, if anything's to go by the last couple of years. That's an interesting round as well, because it's an open tyre format, but you've got to use both the compounds in each of the races. So that will change the dynamic a little bit, and it does mean that the tyre multiplier does go back to a ×2 situation. Rest of the calendar just looking like this, just not without spitting out the dates, but just to give you an idea of where we are going in the race formats. So round 3, Topor, which is very popular from last year. That's going to be the sprint format, so triple header sprint format with the reverse grid component mixed up in, or half mixed grid reverse component mixed in there as well. The Supercars round actually falls on Anzac Day, so that'll be quite a celebration being in New Zealand. Symmons Plains is round 4, so Symmons back on the calendar after a year's absence. That's a 200 kilometre races for Supercars, 290Ks for the Dev, and it's going to feature something a little bit different for the first time. We can officially make the announcement here. It's going to be a knockout qualifying format, so the same thing that Supercars have done in real life in years gone past. There will be a decision made depending on how many cars are in the field on the night. How many cars get knocked out in Q1, get knocked out in Q2, and then how many cars go for pole in the shootout in Q3. So that'll be interesting to see. Barbagallo follows in round number 5. Now, for the last couple of years, that has had a day race and a night race. This year, the night racing has been scrapped, so much to Rhodey's pleasure, because it means his computer can actually hack it. And that's a 2-race long-distance format. Hidden Valley gets the long and short format. That's at round 6. Round 7 is Townsville, and that's a single 180 kilometre race, so that will be interesting for the return to Townsville. Round 8 is designated the international round. Now, last couple of years, last year we had Long Beach, which was pure and utter bedlam. The year before that, we had Watkins Glen, which was pure and utter joy, because of the type of racing was incredible, and it was great to see everybody with the NASCAR theme for Watkins Glen. Now, we don't know what it's going to be this year, but I think what is probably going to happen is the admins are going to sit down and work out what tracks are appropriate, and then that's what the vote will be, based on what we think is going to deliver the best racing. I can tell you now, it probably won't be Long Beach. But there'll be there's a couple of options floating around.
Yeah, the aim is going to be basically out of the feedback out of last year with Long Beach, given that it was a functional track, but I think that's about as best you could describe it from a mod or a content production
standpoint.
We could race on it, but the tyre barriers were somehow the worst things to hit. There was some iffy joints in the road and iffy joints in the walls. The focus for this year, this is a bit of a year of getting more out of doing less, in so much as we've been working pretty hard as an admin team. We're not dropping, but we're taking the foot off the pedal a little bit. We're trying to maximise what we can do without having to put in quite so much effort. So the idea for international round for this year is we've already been to a lot of different tracks through Supercars, through Social Series, through GT3, through even the F1 stuff we've done at times. There is a very good selection of international grade, or just not even international grade, but adequately produced modded tracks that we can use for international round. And to be fair, there are stock tracks we could use as well. We're going to take a list of everything that we've run that would work from a quality standpoint, and I think the idea potentially is we're going to curate that down to a shortened list, and then we're going to give it to the community to then vote on and go, what do you want to run? It would potentially mean we could go back to Watkins Glen again. I mean, I'm up for that. The racing we had there was It's one of the few times that iRacing's slightly dumb calendar of going to every American track, and because there's nothing Australian that exists in iRacing, that actually makes sense because those cars race really well around there. That's the thing we actually haven't had. We haven't had Gen 3 race around Watkins, and it would be good because Gen 3 is the closest that we've ever had to NASCAR, and NASCAR races really well around Watkins Glen. So it's it's up to a democratic vote, and it's up to whether we include previous tracks. But if Watkins is on there and Watkins does get in, I think the Gen 3 racing around there could be really something special. But it's going to be, I look at everything we've done for GD3, for Social Series, for anything else that it is of a standard that we can basically be happy to put our name to for a series, rather than where Long Beach was at last year. And yeah, that'll be a format as a TBA, depending on what length of track and what style of track, whether it's a street circuit, with some road course. I don't know whether it's an oval. We don't go to an oval, but like we get like a roval somewhere in there maybe. But yeah, that's very much in the air. We won't know that stuff until sort of probably May, June.
Yeah, so that's still to be worked out. We want to get it worked out as quickly as we can. The last 4 rounds on the calendar, so Sandown is a single driver event this year. That's actually a single 250k race for the Supercars, a little bit shorter for Dev. Round 10 is a triple header format again, and we're going to the Bend Motorsport Park, but we're doing the modern Supercars layout. We're not doing the West layout as we've done it for the last couple of years, which has produced really interesting racing, but we're going to do something a little bit different. Bathurst is round 11. That's in October. It's a 250k race for Dev and a 300k race for Maine. And then the final race is going to be a pair of middle distance races at Adelaide. Traditional finishing round at Adelaide. Speaking of finishing, it's clock on 0. So there's nobody sort of still running around there on a lap, I think. So we are only a handful of seconds away, I would say, Rhodey, from getting into qualifying for race number 2 of the night, which is the Sydney Motorsport Park Gardner layout. So as we said, the times are sort of going to be, in the lower part of the upper part of the 1 minute 20s, probably 1 minute 28, 29 is probably sort of where we sort of, the ballpark average. And the race pace is probably going to be in the 1 minute, the low to mid 1 minute 30s, depending on how things go. Won't talk too much about the racing. We'll leave that for the Pallet Control Solutions Race Facts to do the talking on that front. But let's get going for qualifying.
Absolutely. So I think much the same as last time, as we're seeing everyone come out. And I will actually credit the grid as well. We will do a livery roast later in the season. You did note that one was out for... We will have noted that we put one out for Dev Series a week and a bit ago. We won't have one until probably after round 2 for Supercars. But one thing I will say already is I think it's the most diverse colour set we've had for a grid this year. We've got pink cars. We've got, I think watermelon is what you'd call Dan McDonald's car.
Yes.
We've got purple. We've got highlighter green. We've got brown. With a couple of different shades of red actually with the grid. Some orange. There's purple. We've got blue. We've got white. There's, I think, most of the sort of primary colours are 3, but most of the standard sort of range of colours are represented on the grid in some way this year, which is good to see, and it's helping. Aside the fact that there's 2 Valvoline cars that look near identical on the front, there is enough out there you can tell pretty much every car apart at a distance. Yeah,
that's right. Well, here we go. 10 minutes again on the clock. Let's go qualifying, and Ryan Smith leading them out yet again. So, well, we used to say for years and years and years it was customary for Daniel Cox to be the one to lead everybody out, and well, Ryan Smith's the one that's led them out both races, both qualifying sessions so far tonight. So a little bit, I wouldn't say it's a changing of the guard just yet.
No.
It's more about stealing parliamentary privilege, I think, for Ryan Smith.
Yeah, the other thing as well for Ryan is that, and I'm not saying this as a comment in contrast to wherever Coxie was at last year, but Ryan's, at least for this race, he's about 2/3 way down the pit lane. So he's going to be on it pretty early to be ahead of the queue, because anybody could pull out at the same time as he does ahead of him and get to the head of the queue. So he's been on it real early both times. He's set up, dialed in, ready to go, and He's about to start that lap. He's already got the tyre warming and the brake warming going. You can hear that now when he's about to start on that first time lap.
Yep, so he's coming around the final sequence of corners now, just while we're keeping an eye on a couple of different people. So Brandon Dostal is probably about 300 or 400 metres behind him at the moment, who's on screen. His teammate just in front of him as well. A couple of other drivers are sort of around the back part of the circuit. I think it was the 16 of the 21 drivers were in the lane ready to go the minute that the green light turned on. The only one who's not out there at the moment is Steve Warwick. And it's a big long. I'll tell you what, I wouldn't want to be in this queue right now, Rhodey. You've got a lot of cars are very close together. Like, we just picked up Will Devonish at random, and he's got both the Vortex Racing cars in between him, ahead of them. He's got Cam Rutledge. Ben Hall's just gone off of his own volition. Yep. And yeah, now it's a simple case of, you're in the mix. You just got to do the lap, I think, at the moment. And you've decided to go out where you've gone out, and you've got to just put up with that. Everybody else is on a lap, and so you've just got to suck up what you got and put the time on the board at the moment. That's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. So if you get out early enough, you can build that gap, and you can come out onto the track wherever you feel you need to come out onto the track. So you're in clear air, or you've got a little bit of a distant tow if you've got behind someone that's a bit faster than you. Devon just had a bit of a moment there going through turn 5. But if you get on the back of somebody and you end up getting too close to the back of them, they end up impeding you. But because they're on a fast lap as well, they don't get penalised, and it's a simple case of, well, you stuffed up.
Absolutely. Ryan Smith's about to come around to finish his first lap, so we'll get a time on the board, and we'll get a sequence of times after his. I think the next car in the train from him is Damon McDonald, and then we've got one of the Valvoline cars back there. I think that's Aidan Williams.
29.4 for Smith, 30.5. Oh, sorry, 30.0 for Damon McDonald. That's actually probably a bit more representative time for him. Stenberg 28.5 straight away, so he jumps to the top. 6/10 clear, or almost 6/10 clear of Brandon Dostal, and Aidan Williams not too far behind him. So that's the early flurry of times. Devonish into third, 29.1. Turra fractionally quicker than him, 29.0, and 16 times on the board so far. Stenberg going quicker again in Sector 1, just by a little bit, not by much, but he's now going to fast approach the back of, I think that's Aidan Williams, who's behind McDonald, who's behind Smith. So they were the first 4 cars that were across the line. Cox, the last of the slowest of the runners at the moment, 18th. Ben Hall, who was off the road at the start of the lap, has gone around and is now starting another lap. And so it's just him and Steve Warwick who are yet to set time. Steve's on a time lap at the moment. He's at turn 2.
Yeah, you talked about it earlier, and I did just simply have a look on the Dev Series times around here. It is worth noting that the Dev Series cars are actually quicker than the Gen 3 cars. It's not something that's unique to us. IRL. The only reason the Dev Series looks slower basically is because the drivers in Dev Series are usually slower than the guys in Supercars, but around the right tracks, Dev Series is absolutely quicker than Supercars IRL. Which is part of the design, the run less aero in Gen 3. But as things sit currently, there's 2 or 3 drivers that are quicker in Dev Series machinery than these guys have been in Supercars, and it's the 2 I was mentioning earlier that qualified and finished 1-2, Dan McDonald and Darren Lognan. Darren Lognan, I think there might be one other as well that are quicker than Kurt currently. But Kurt's probably got a little bit more time in it. That said, Kurt's not the quickest time anymore. Will Devonish has just gone up.
No, he has indeed. And I was actually about to just cutting back to this man, Brent Foley, because he set a purple first sector faster than Kurt Stenberg. He actually jumps back up to third, so good little exchange there. Foley ahead of Williams, and then they're playing a bit of leapfrog there. Devonish into a 28.2. So already some quite competitive times on the board, and this man again being right at the pointy end of the field. So all his driving in the Legends cars in the AASA sanctioned series is paying off, I think, in the real world experience. We always like to see, Rhodey, how a real world experience translates into the sim and vice versa.
Yeah, we do generally have that with a couple of drivers each year as they come through. We've had I don't know who it was, but there is one of the current Dev Series drivers, IRL, that actually did pop up in here at one point a couple of years back. It wasn't a full-time tilt. I think it was just one of the guys that came out Calder Park from memory.
Damon Woods in Formula
Damon
Ford.
Woods. Oh, sorry, Formula Ford. Yeah, sorry, good point. Yeah, I'm conflating my drivers. But, yeah, so there's that. Obviously, a couple of guys in ASR have either have or were already before they came here doing track day stuff. So Lockie Lock, Matt Cecil, Pete Throwers running BMW E30s over in New Zealand. A couple of guys are actually running in that series as well. I think Sam Dunstall's running in that as well. He's running as Pete's teammate in development series. And obviously, to varying degrees, you and I both have experience in real-life race cars as well. You drove a couple of cars with one of the Aussie Driver Search days, and I spent a full year absolutely hacking at the back of a Formula V grid.
Well, I've actually been promised to drive in an Avanti Formula V when it's up and running, so I'm waiting for the day when that happens. So big thanks to Cam Bell and his team if that actually gets off the ground, but we'll wait and see when that actually happens. Rory Collins coming to the line here. 3 minutes, or a little under 3 minutes on the clock, and this time from Collins is at 30.2, so it's a slight improvement. The times at the top getting a little bit interesting. So Devonish and Stenberg still there, but Turra's jumped over both Smith and Foley. Smith has actually gone quicker than Foley as Collins has a Collins-esque moment. Exiting turn number 1. Brandon Dostal up to 7th place. That's a good result for him so far, just fractionally ahead of Locke, who's fractionally ahead of Damon McDonald, and Egmanis, who finished 3rd in that first race. So 7th through 10th, there's a little over 3/4 of a tenth of a second separating those drivers at the moment. So that's all to play for and up for grabs there. And then you've got the first of the SES Shogun entries, Ewing in 11th, just ahead of Daniel Cox. Egmanis, big surprise for me there. He's just jumped. I just noticed he's just jumped up to P2. Did he get a tow from somebody?
I'll have to go back and have a look, but I don't believe, at least at the end of the lap. No, he had nobody at the end of the lap.
Wow. There's
3 green start of the lap, but that's come from nowhere.
3 green sectors, and he's ahead of Kurt Stenberg by a little over 0.03 of a second. So that's a big surprise for me that he's jumped up the order, but that's a good result and very, very strong performance. Stenberg just behind him on the road here. Now he gets around, he will get another lap in on top of this one. What's his first sector say? It's good. It's very good, actually. It's a tenth of a second quicker than the current pole time. It's not a purple first sector because that's gone to Brenton Foley, but it is currently quicker than the provisional P1 time of Will Devonish, who is out and about and is on a lap himself. He is about 25 seconds behind Stenberg on track. So for Devonish, this will be touch and go if he gets one more after this. It'll be very close.
Absolutely, yeah. So Stenberg coming up to the second sector mark now, and he's still good.
Still good on his PB. He has
6 tenths on himself. Sorry, 6 tenths on first, and
600
nearly 3 tenths on a PB. Yeah,
600 on first. Yeah, so he has lost a little. He's lost a little bit of time relative to the sector 1 split, and he's had a moment out of the final corner there. That will hurt a little bit. It probably will improve his time. It may not improve the place. Let's see what happens. He gets to the line. I was about to say we didn't get a proper read on that as to how much quicker he actually was, but he has jumped to the top of the timing screens. I thought it was actually going to be close, and he was going to be a close second, but he found a bit of time out of the final corner and has gone to the top with a 28.1. Devonish not too far behind. This is his last lap, so if he doesn't get it on the board here, he is starting P2 at best, and he's currently gone to P1 by 0.08 of a second. So Stenberg's got to go again, and he can't go again because he's 2 seconds down on his own time at the Sector 1 split. He needed to keep the hammer on, but maybe didn't have the fuel for it, or maybe he got the worst out of the tyres. I had a moment. We didn't see it. Devonish snatches it by a paper's width.
I think realistically, Kurt might have thought he was going to be probably pretty comfortable. Maybe didn't plan on having a second lap in it, but either way, he basically would have needed to keep pushing from the line. And I think he probably got the lap done, thought, "Yep, job done. I've cleared it by a margin that won't be beat," and just kind of, sort of put his hands up and lean back. And then it wasn't until he got to turn 3, turn 4 that no, it was by nothing. But Devonish did beat him, and by that point, it was too late for him to push on for another lap. He had the opportunity to. He was over the line in time. He just hadn't accommodated it within his planning. So through 0.08 of a second, Will Devonish has pole.
He certainly does. what a dramatic end to qualifying there when that one was. So I was surely thinking that Stenberg was going to have the insurance policy and go for another lap. And unfortunately for him, he rolled out of it thinking, yep, I reckon I've got it, and snatched at the death. Snatched at the absolute death by Devonish. So 2 poles for Devonish tonight and 2 front row starts for Kurt Stenberg. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Egmanis third, good result for him. Excellent result for him, being up to P3. Noah Turren fourth, Smith and Foley. Foley fractionally behind Ryan Smith, so another good starting spot for Brenton Foley. Aidan Williams in 7th. Luke Newing gets the Dare Ice Coffee Machine up to 8th. Dostal in 9th. Another good, strong qualifying for him. Backs up the 7th place start he had in the first race. And then Lockie Lock, that's actually a pretty decent result for Lock in 10th. McDonald and Cox. And then Boak, Warwick, Knight, Speck, Rutledge, Callaghan, Collins, and then the 2 Halls. The Ben variety ahead of the Bailey variety. So there you go. Qualifying for race number 2 done and dusted. And I think we're probably going to have a little bit of a shorter... actually, we're probably looking at the clock here just to see how things are going. We probably can actually squeeze the 5-minute warm-up in for the race, because we reckon it's going to be about a 48-minute race. That's probably going to take us up to about 10:20 local time here on the East Coast. We actually don't have any New Zealand drivers in tonight, so it's actually not too bad from a timing standpoint. That does give us a bit of a chance to have a look at the Sydney Motorsport Park Gardner layout again. So let's use Google Earth Maps and zoom in once again on the Sydney metropolitan region, Sydney CBD area. Off to the right, and then off to the left is the industrial precinct of Sydney Motorsport Park, just in the Eastern Creek area. There it is, 31 laps. This one is a distance race. It is a single 31 lap event. Some extra corners, so you go right at turn 4 instead of turning left and taking the shortcut, and then have to go through that yellow sector 2 on the dog leg, and that brings you back around to turn 8, which was turn 5 on the shorter layout, and then from there it's pretty much the same layout as per the last race that we did. So there you go. It is a shorter layout for race 1. It's the longer layout for race number 2. This one is highlighted by, again, the long loaded corners. So turn 1, turn 2, then you've got the likes of the last couple of corners. So the right hand side tyre takes a punishing here. You need to lean on it coming out of turn 6 and turn 5. Turn 6 being a traction zone and having to get the exit right there. Turn 8 again becomes a traction zone. Turn 8, the slowest corner on the course. So there will be a bit of tyre management involved in it. There will be pit stops in this one. You can make the tyres last if you really try, but you do need some safety car help to make it happen. Don't foresee that happening. We didn't have one in the development series race, which was an interesting situation, but unless you get a couple of them in this race, you are going to need to stop not only the tyres, but your fuel will not make it either. So you do need to take a bit of a splash of fuel to get home in this one. Some drivers in the development series, they split it down the middle. They took part of a tank and then sort of put another part of a tank in, and then a few drivers decided to fill up the tank because they were quick enough, and then have a shorter fill during the stop. Fuel does cover the tyres, but depending on how much fuel you take depends on how long you will stand stationary for in the pit lane. So that's the important piece of the equation, is how you go about conducting your pit stop. Do you take slightly more fuel? Do you run slightly heavier in the early part of the race? Do you run lighter? Do you take a short fill and then get in nice and early, then run in some clear air on a full tank, or do you split it down the middle? You've got to make that judgment call, and you've got to make that judgment call right now. You've got to know what your race pace is. So hopefully a few drivers will have done some full fuel laps in practice, and they will understand where their car is at on a full tank of fuel, and then they'll be able to make that decision if they are going to take a full tank of fuel into the start of the race, or if they're going to take a part tank if they feel that they can't run on a full tank if they're going to be a little bit too slow. So that'll be the interesting part of this race that's about to happen over 31 laps, is at what point do you decide it's worthwhile coming in to stop. You might even pull the trigger a little bit early. You might even decide you're being held up in the traffic and then have to come out of the traffic and then try and perform the undercut. Or in the case of some other drivers, you might just want to split it down the middle or run as long as possible and hope for a safety car. You just don't know what is going to happen over the 31 lap distance. Rhodey is, if you're wondering why Rhodey's not talking too much at the moment, he is taking use of the facilities, a la Greg Murphy, not in that regard, but it's not going to be 5 minutes in the can for Rhodey. It'll be a little bit shorter, no doubt. So we're just keeping tabs on everybody that's running through pit lane and performing their starts at the moment. So as we said a little while ago, just before qualifying, don't forget, you've got a 2-week wait for the next Supercars broadcast here on Outlaw Broadcasting, so the 4th of April from the Gold Coast, and next week you've got the Development Series race from the Gold Coast as well. Whoops, says Noah Tara makes a bit of a right hash of that coming over Corporate Hill, and into the tyre barrier he goes. So inside the last minute of the practice session, just before we get into race number 2. Brody, what are you looking forward to in this one? I've spoken about what the strategy is the drivers are going to take. Where's the crossover point is going to be the typical question I think a lot of these drivers are going to ask. Where do you think that crossover point is where you have to get in and get your stop done if you've got no choice?
It's going to be an interesting one to play out, because this is one of the few tracks that we race on that, and I mentioned this in the interviews last week, that whatever it is, no matter how hard we try, it seems to be impossible to get the track to throw a safety car, which usually in racing is, if nothing else, the time that everyone likes to wait for to do a pit stop, because it's a 0 penalty pit stop essentially. We tried last week and didn't get one. We didn't try the hardest. There wasn't a 25 car pile-up, but we tried all reasonable options and couldn't get one to come out. I'm not saying these guys can't, especially the way some of them were racing in race 1. You know, that battle between Ryan Smith and Noah Tara and Aidan Williams. You had 2 or 3 more cars in that, and everyone got split at once. You could potentially cause one. Yeah, that's normally where you might look at. You might go, okay, I have a lap in mind, but if a safety car comes, I'm going to go for when the safety car comes. Without one, it's going to be interesting to see how they want to play it. Right in the middle, in theory, offers the best chance of getting the most out of your tyres. But you might wait a little earlier. To be fair, you might see it where drivers will sit there and just have it basically ready to go on a button and just wait until the driver they're racing comes in, especially if their entire race has been set in the slipstream of the guy they're racing with. They don't want to lose that. So I'm going to see how it goes. Basically, that was a whole minute of telling you I don't really have an answer for it. But it's a hard one to make a call on where the best is going to be. In theory, right in the middle makes sense for tyres, but races are never clean running. They're never a perfect sample situation. There's always a lot of variables, and you've really just got to play what hand gets thrown at you. I think we've lost Nether.
Yep, you did for a split second while I was sorting something out. Yep, I agree with you on that part of it. I was running a sort of a strategy in the Development Series race of half tanking it, or basically splitting the fuel in half and splitting the tyres straight down the middle. Turned out to be a little bit of a wrong strategy, because a lot of other drivers that were faster than me were able to run at a much quicker pace on a heavier fuel load, which meant that they came out of the pit stop with a material gain. So that's something I think a lot of drivers will probably have thought about, and got to make that decision of, can I run with a full tank of fuel at a decent pace, or do I have to run a little bit lighter to get maximum pace out of the car? So you've got to make that call, and you had to make that if you did your 20 minutes practice and got your full fuel laps in. So for the second race of the night, it is the second race in succession. Will Devonish is going to start from the pole. So 2 poles in season 2025 for him. 2 front row starts for Kurt Stenberg. And as we said at the beginning of the show, he is now officially, he's been hunting Luke Rosella's record. He is now level with him in terms of the most race victories in ASR Supercars history. Curtis Igmana starting in third place. Good qualifying for him. Noah Tara right next door in fourth. He's going to renew some hostilities here, I would say, with Ryan Smith in fifth, and probably also with Aidan Williams in seventh. But between the two of them, it is Brent Foley. Again, good, strong starting position for him. He was the sad story, I think, out of the first race. He was in a very strong position before a bit of accidental contact with Noah Tara in turn two, put him out of business. Williams, as we said, in seventh. Luke Ewing, better starting position for him in race 2 compared to race 1, so he starts in 8th. Brandon Dostal, good strong, again, qualifying position for him in 9th, with Lockie Lock. First top 10 start for Lockie Lock in quite some time, so a good result for him as well. Better qualifying for Damon McDonald, starting 11th in the Lit Q number 90, so Lit Q number 59. Daniel Cox in 12th. Phil Boak in 13th, Steve Warwick directly behind him in 14th place. Ethan Knight has missed the start. He's going to start this one from pit lane. He's already lined up and ready to go. So that means Luke Speck has got a vacant spot to his left side, I think, on the grid, starting 16th. And rounding it out, you've got Cam Rutledge in the CRE number 15, Darryl Callaghan in 18th, Rory Collins 19th, and then the two Vortex cars off the back with Ben Hall ahead of Bailey Hall ready.
Yeah, so good running for Ben. He's one of the few guys that's
Where's
gone from
Boakey
being a
going?
full-time driver. It's tire warming, I think, taking all the tarmac available to him. Ben's gone from being a full-time driver to essentially being a float driver. He was actually meant to be one of the guest cars tonight, but Darren pulled out and offered him the spot. Also to help things make it hard for us to put both Halls in the same team.
Certainly is. Well, this is the longer distance part of the Sydney 180. It is the 120-kilometre distance race. Let's get it underway. And it's, well, second verse, same as the first. What on earth do we say about that? Stenberg straight to the lead, yet again, converts beautifully from the racing line side of the grid. I don't know why Pole's not on the racing line side of the grid, but it seems to be the preferred part of it because you've got the grip out there. And this time he hasn't sort of gotten away at a vast clip. Devonish has managed to hang on to P2 ahead of his teammate in Igmanis, who's gotten to third. Turra in fourth, and then Smith in fifth. So pretty much the top six as they were. Sands for Stenberg, jumping ahead of Devonish at the start.
Yeah, I think the only real difference there is that he's just not as far, he's not as clear. So Devonish has improved his start. It's not nearly as good as Stenberg, and I think part of it, Turra, I think maybe pinched a brake and had to try and
no contact situation. Contact. Ryan Smith with a bit of a later braking manoeuvre than usual, accidental contact, but it does see Turra lose a couple of spots there, and Smith up to fourth, and Turra down to I think about 8th in the order, actually behind Aidan Williams and just marginally in front of Luke Newing. In actual fact, Newing's having a real red-hot go at him in the background here as well, and actually has to concede and just pull in behind because he's also got a fast-starting Damon McDonald ahead of him.
Yeah, an angry little train here that Ryan's starting to form now. Foley's trying to get through, but he's not really having an opportunity to. Dostal's actually a bit of a gap back from him. Sorry,
that's Boak on the back of Damon McDonald. So Foley's
Foley's
up
I was
fifth.
talking about Ryan. Yeah, I was talking about Ryan Smith.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
sorry, my bad. Yes, you're right.
And Foley's having a crack at that. Dostal's in the back as well. I think he's trying to give himself a bit of room to Foley. That's it. He's currently having a battle with Williams, and they're getting very desperate. And then you're right, it was Noah Turra in with Luke Newing. You're right, you mentioned Boakey at the back there. Oh, bit of contact for Foley off the side of Ryan. There's a solid nearly 10-car train here that's headed by Ryan and not really going anywhere quickly. So it's forcing them to battle with each other. Not unlike the trains we used to see or familiar of seeing of Darren Kemp in Super 2.
That's it. Well, Foley tried to go around the outside of turn 4, and that was not a wise decision because Aidan Williams has cut back underneath, and now he's all over the back of Ryan Smith, giving him what for and giving him the big hurry up heading down to turn number 6. So this is nuts to butt stuff at the moment, heading up and over Corporate Hill. Smith very much the cork in the champagne bottle, but Aidan Williams with a good turn of speed here, and I think he'll look to clear the 60 as quickly as he possibly can. He doesn't want this to become a situation where they lose so much time to the leaders that there's no opportunity to fight for a podium because they're disappearing up the road in a hurry.
Yeah, at this point the train is 4th all the way back to 15th is within this, is technically under this train of Ryan Smith, and the more he keeps essentially backing these guys up, the bigger that train's going to get. It's going to be the top 2 gap Termo, gap the rest of the field.
Yeah, on the back of the train, the last car on the back of the train is Steve Warwick in 15th. So you're right, Ryan Smith in 4th and Steve Warwick in 15th. The gap between them it's a 4-second train, right? You stood there with your stopwatch as they went across the line and counted 4 seconds. You'd see the better part of 11 cars go past.
Yeah, it's a few more mirror caps go flying, so it's very willing at the front. Yeah, it's interesting to the gamble of what Ryan's doing. I think as Aidan Williams had a bit of a lose under Ryan's rear wing. I think getting over the hump had a little bit of either that or got wide. This is what I mentioned earlier. Oh, actually, Ryan's just over the spot.
Yeah,
probably the redress. Yeah, actually, you make a good point. That's probably why he's back in the train up. He wanted the redress without losing any other spots, so he's been defending like he has, so that he can get Tara up past him again, so that he's cleared. The question will be if that's is reported, whether the redress was sufficient, given it took him the best part of 2 laps to achieve it.
Yeah, normally the rule is that you've got a lap from the time that you completed the incident at the same part of the course to actually do the redress. And given that we're on lap 3 and the incident was on lap 1, it'll be questionable as to whether or not the stewards look fairly upon that. But of course, it is down to the individual drivers that do need to report those scenarios. So I would hope that the 2 of them have a little bit of a discussion after this is over and then mutually agree to, if they agree to agree or they agree to disagree, and then we'll see what happens after that. Ewing's trying to have a go at Dave McDonald here, and Daniel Cox is trying to have a go at him, and he's going to be big, brave, and try to go around the outside here at turn number 1. This is almost sprint racing action here. And who's that? That's actually Ben Hall, who's already been into the lane. He's already gone a lap down after 4 laps. So that's something I think, Brody, you might want to look into as to what on earth happened to Ben Hall that he had to come in after such a short period of time.
I'll have a look at that now.
So Ewing has to settle back in behind McDonald at the beginning of lap 4. I can't believe that this is already becoming very much a sprint affair after just a handful of laps. Here's Foley having another look at the inside here of Ryan Smith. Right-hand side mirror cap goes flying off the PBF Race Engineering Camaro. He can't get the job done though, but he's right up against the rear bumper of the number 60. Will he send it down the inside at 8? He does, and he outbrakes himself. They both get a bit of a lock up there. There's some contact for both of them, and Williams might try, and I was about to say, it looked like Williams was potentially going to capitalise on the scenario there, but he didn't. And they ended up in the same running order that they did before they got to turn 8 in the first place.
Yeah, to quickly provide some sort of an answer for Ben Hall, I don't really have an answer. All he did was have a spin. I suggest maybe, given the amount of time he spent stopped, maybe something he had to deal with something IRL that forced his attention away from the sim for a minute. What that has meant is a lap down, and he's pitted way too early for that to be of any consequence to him come the race. So unless it's a safety car, he's going to be in trouble. But Foley went for a dive and it did not pay off. He's lucky the tarmac's there on the outside.
Oh, and he's lucky to come back on ahead of Damon McDonald, but he's going to lose that spot to McDonald as well. Oh, Dostal into the back. Oh, right behind there of Ewing. They were actually fighting coming down into turn number 1. So Ewing was trying to get the pass done. Oh, and you've got to be super careful there because there's Collins. That's almost an unsafe rejoin between the 00 and the 17 there, but we will go and take a look at that one because that was happening behind the Foley and the Foley situation on the rejoin there. So this is what had happened. So Ewing had gotten ahead of Dostal down the front straight and covering the middle of the road. Oh, late decision from Dostal too. That one probably will be looked upon, I guess, unfavourably. That's an avoidable incident, and I'd say, and that one probably was a hair's width away from being contact on the rejoin.
Yeah, I can see, Dostal in the rejoin trying to get out of the way. Ideally, should have stayed in the runoff to let Ewing through rather than try and rejoin the track, because with the runoff, an extra 2 or 3 cars with the room to play with, there just isn't on the actual track itself once you exit turn 2. So good awareness by Collins to avoid that becoming a problem for him, but he did still have to check up. So yeah, it definitely could have been a better performed rejoin. But Yeah, it's easy to do. I think he trapped onto that rear wing like he was, and just he tried to get out of it. Dostal, I give him credit to that. He did try to get out of it. He just made the decision a bit too late to try and come across and clear Luke Newing.
Well, I'll tell you what, there must have been an incident on the last lap between Will Devonish and Kurt Stenberg, because they both did 1:34s, and
Termo's in first now.
Exactly, and Igmanis leads the race. So I just had a quick sneaky look at the live timing, and they both did 1:34s, and the times were in the bad times were in sector 2. So that's this part of the track where they are in now, between turn number 4 and the exit of turn number 8. So I imagine maybe there's been a little bit of contact going into 5, 6, or 8, one of those corners, and that's caused a little bit of a dilemma. But
yeah, I just went back and had a look. There was a move going on, the yellow flag actually through that sequence. So somebody said something somewhere, but actually, there's a car on the outside. No, actually, I'm just seeing things. No, so with Will and with Kurt, they were racing down through the hairpin. I think Will had gone for a wider apex. Kurt's taken hers up the inside, and Will had turned back down, and so that meant that Will's turned off Kurt's nose, and Kurt immediately got out of the throttle and redrested. So that'll be why Termo's only pulled ahead of the pair of them, and Will's now back up to speed clearly with the fastest lap for the race. But yeah, that'll be what happens. So some good racing in the pair of them, but also very genuinely racing that they saw an error in it and immediately went and slowed down and redressed it. So they know that the race is 31 laps long. If they've got another 20 odd laps to sort this stuff out, they don't need to worry about Termo being ahead of them for the next 10 or so.
No, that's right. Well, the important thing then is at the moment, who's got pit priority between these two? Because Devonish is clearly the quicker car, and I would say he's probably going to go for a move at turn 6 or 8 on this lap and try and clear off. But yeah, I would say the car that is ahead probably will have the pit priority should that come about. Here we go, turn number 6, plunges down the inside, job done, onto the racing line, nice move.
Yeah, pretty well done. I actually managed to mostly avoid any penalty for Igmanis in the process in terms of a time loss to Stenberg, although that said is pretty elementary as to when Stenberg would get through, given that Stenberg's doing pretty similar pace to Devonish, and Devonish took all of, about a lap and a bit to do it. Yeah, it's just going to be a case of Kurt's going to want to get through sooner rather than later, because Termo is able to effectively, as he is now, act as a little bit of a block, a bit of a tail gunner for Will to try and extend some sort of lead out, similar to what Stenberg was able to do at the start of race 1. And
Noatara coming like a precise Japanese missile along the way as well. He's latched onto the back of the Camaro of Kurt Stenberg by a couple of tenths, but Stenberg will try and clear Igmanis here and put another car between him, because he knows the pace that that number 26 amped up Racing Mustang's got, and he gets that job done. Now, if you're Igmanis, you would probably stay a little bit wide here and probably let what is perceived to be the quick Motel car through and let him pursue after Stenberg. But it is, of course, a fairly long race in all of this as well, so there is a little bit of time, and I think it's only a matter of time before Igmanis pulls the trigger and stays wide, lets the faster car go through, and there it is right there at turn 4. So that as much as Igmanis did lead a couple of laps there, it's sort of gone back to a little bit of normality. Stenberg now pursuing Devonish, and Tara trying to get into the mix for P2.
Absolutely, and it makes sense for the wider team call in so much as that, they are running under a different team, but they are under the wider, they being Amped Up Racing, are under the wider CRE banner. If Termo doesn't have the pace to help out Will with Kurt in race 2, then maybe Tara is able to do that. And even just general, it sort of makes sense to let the fast driver through, because otherwise you end up in a position where you've got 10 cars on a train behind you, and then all kinds of things can happen.
That's right. Going back through the field as well, so as it sits right now after 8 laps, Aidan Williams has made his way forward after being in the thick of the battle with the skirmish, so he's up to 5th. David McDonald, right, so he's now moved his way forward. He started in 11th, he's now up to 6th place, and he was the one that a few people have been throwing the P word around for the promotion. If you don't know what the P word is, that's exactly what it is, it's promotion. And he was sort of, I guess, the outside dark horse, considering his development series pace, that he was going to be in the mix potentially for some, strong top 5 and some, maybe a couple podium finishes throughout the course of the year. He's definitely come a long way since he's in the development series last year, so it'd be interesting just to see how he's going. But this one's been a much better start for him compared to the sprint affair. Ryan Smith behind him in 7th, he's lost a couple of spots. Brent Foley in 8th, he's lost a couple of spots. Daniel Cox in 9th, he's gained 3 spots. And then the last one inside the 10 is Luke Speck, and he's gained 6 spots. Now, one of those spots, actually 2 of those spots, came at the expense of his teammate Luke Ewing being nerfed by Dostal in the braking zone in turn 2.
Absolutely, yeah. But already we're starting to see some guys that are, yeah, that's half the art of racing. It's just staying out of trouble, and it's around picking your battles. As if you see, someone trying to go, or even if you're in the opportunity yourself to go 3 wide, it's having the knowledge, or I suppose the thought process to go, maybe that's not a good idea right now.
No, that's right. Well, those two have actually found each other. They nerfed themselves at turn 2 a handful of laps ago, tucked in behind the second of the amped up racing by CRE Machines of Lockie Lock there, who's running in 15th place. So he's dropped out of the top 10 after a pretty strong qualifying. And a couple of other drivers that have actually moved their way forward. Steve Warwick and Darryl Callaghan, they've gone quietly achieving. So Steve's on the fringes of the top 10 at the moment. He's in 11th, but he's about 2.5 seconds behind Luke Speck. So that's where the situation of the race is at the moment. And if we have a look at our pallet control solutions and race facts for race number 2, you can see the logic there. There it is. So 31 laps. We are about 1/3 of the way through the race at the moment. And you can see there the fuel burn rate is a lot higher than the shorter circuit because there's more tarmac to cover, there's more traction zones, which means naturally more fuel gets burnt. And as we've been talking about already prior to the race getting underway, it's all about that pit stop crossover point. So you have to have done your homework. You've got to have worked out where you're faster. Are you faster on a full boat than you are on a not so full boat? Can you maintain that sort of pace? Can you run therefore a little bit longer? Or if you need to pull the trigger early, can you just get in, get a set of tyres with a shorter fill and make a material gain in pit lane? That's what we're going to be paying attention to when the pit stop window opens, which effectively is around about now anyway. You could definitely stop now and get home from here with a set of tyres and a full tank of fuel.
Yeah, we're interested to see who, if anyone, pulls the pin this early. You almost, I think realistically, I mentioned earlier about the difficulty of causing a safety car, and I mean, we had a few yellows, no safety cars so far tonight. I think realistically you hang tough, but also you made the argument of yourself with your strategy is there's the argument of if you're going to go halfway in pit, do you put in exactly that much of fuel or do you put in a full tank? I generally go to put in a full tank or as much as I can because it leaves the flexibility if I decide I want to push later. Whereas if you fuel for half the race, then you only can go as far as half the race. So I think most of the guys here probably will have a little bit in reserve in the tank. I don't think anyone's going to be too cute with their strategy because all it takes is something else, as I mentioned, that all the variables that replace something else to come up and you're in trouble. But I think realistically, yeah, it's going to be probably at the 15, 16 lap point that we're going to start to see a lot of these drivers come in.
Yeah, I think so too. I was just having a bit of a look on board with Daniel Cox because he did send me an updated dashboard for his car because he forgot to include it, but I've also just realised he hasn't mapped it properly either, so we're not going to be able to go on board with the number 94 because it looks like a barcode on the back of a pack of Skittles. That have melted, so that'll be why we're not going to go on board with the Kamikaze Energy machine today. Yeah, the bit that you talk about with the fuel and the flexibility is a bit of an interesting point actually, Rody, because I look at it from a point of depending on what sort of pace you feel you can maintain it really sort of factors into the decision. Your hand might be forced depending on how you go with regards to your qualifying performance and also how you've done with your practice. So if you find you can run, if your pace is better with the half tank of fuel, you might be better to sort of average that half, that pace a little bit more, and then see if you can just snag one in qualifying and qualify really well, and then be able to hang on a little bit versus being able to run on the full boat and try and do the same sort of paces, a lot of other drivers around you, and then just force yourself into making a mistake because the car's heavier. But one thing that all the drivers will be able to do is once they've found their rhythm and once they've found their mojo, Usually what tends to happen is you find they start to fuel save a little bit more just naturally. It's not a situation of conscious fuel saving. You know, if you were trying to push and you were doing, say, 5.2 litres a lap, if you get into the rhythm, that might come down to, say, a 5.1 or a 5.05. So you sort of start to get your fuel back anyway, and therefore you can knock a couple of litres off at the stop because you have got the flexibility of being able to change that fuel fill on the run. So sometimes that can naturally add up to, you know, maybe even 7 or 8 litres over the course of a stint, depending on how long you go, which then impacts your pit stop time. So I think a few drivers should be probably paying some attention. The Cluey ones definitely will be. They'll be able to do the math in their head and work out what their fuel burn actually is, and then they'll be able to simply make the decision of, okay, everything is going well for me. I can knock a couple of litres off because I've got the time to do so, because I know not only am I going to have enough to get home, but with my fuel saving, I can still put a little bit in reserve just in case.
Absolutely, yeah. We're not about pit stops. I'm just having a look through the field and see who's indicating or potentially indicating as to what's happening. I think actually one driver that will be in this lap is Rory Collins, because I can tell he's got a front left puncture. He's just trying to crawl through the hairpin coming down Corporate Hill, so he'll be in this lap. I'm going to guess there was a bit of wall contact somewhere for him, but I think also Kurt Stenberg might be in this lap.
Yeah, I was wondering why he had fallen down the order. In fact, he's on the verge of going a lap down, and Ben Hall, who's already a lap down. Race leader Will Devonish is fast approaching the back of Collins, so yeah, he'll be in. There he goes, and then pretty much directly behind him on the track is your race leader. So Collins is going to just manage to, he's done the right thing by trying to brake early and trying to make sure he doesn't go over the pit lane speed limit line at a too high a speed, so he's made it safely back to pit lane. That's one topic I don't dare want to bring up about pit lane speeding, because it's happened here to several front runners over the course of time, and you can get a little bit greedy coming down the hill into the pit lane, and it comes up on you very quickly, that pit lane line.
It does, for a couple of reasons. One of the ones that people like to claim is the reason they've done it is that there's a sign at the end that says 60 rather than 40. But it seems to be the biggest track for people trying to cheese pit lane speed limit, or more accurately, the pit lane entry line and the speed they do at it. Because I can remember years gone past in Dev Series Supercars broadcasts of, as soon as somebody came to the pit lane, it was the, ooh, that looked a bit quick. Okay, let's roll the dice. Let's see how they went. And it was really going to be a gamble. If there were some laps, okay, some runs you think, oh no, they're fine, and then some you go, well, they'll be fine on the penalty. Some you just like, okay, this guy is clearly doing like 50 on entry, and they magically get away without a penalty at all.
That's right.
But it's something about this track. Maybe it's just the contrast of the length of pit lane travel time versus the length of the track, and that you essentially lose more or less a lap or pretty close to in pit lane. That is why people are trying to cheese as much of pit lane as they can. But yeah, it's so Collins was pretty good, and in terms of the actual lead lap runners, Stenberg is the first one in.
There he is. So he actually just got passed by Noah Tara as well, so not a surprise that Stenberg's pulling the trigger here, just shy of the half distance mark. So he's at the beginning of lap 15 for Kurt Stenberg. And that's about a lap and a half, 2 laps probably away from what the ideal one is, but he's somebody that can make it work. That's the important thing for him, and it's about where he drops now into the traffic. Does he feed in some clear air? Nice quick stop from Stenberg, so he's on the move in pit lane. See Luke Newing's coming to the lane, so too it looks like Phil Boak is coming in as well, and maybe I was looking to see if Cam Rutledge maybe fed in behind there as well. Potentially he did. No, he didn't, so he stayed out. Stenberg comes out, I think, behind Rutledge. Yep, behind Rutledge, and into a little bit of clear air, a little bit of a nice clear pocket here. The cars ahead of him are Rutledge and Bailey Hall.
Yeah, he's in a good spot, because the next car on track behind him, on track is Roy Collins down in 21st, and then it's Ben Hall is actually ahead of him on track in 20th. but a lap down. So yeah, it's anyone pitting from the lead right now, and I think this is why Kurt's pitted this early. He's got no one to worry about. His next car is actually Cam Rutledge, who he's catching up pretty quickly, but he's effectively got no one to worry about for the next couple of laps.
Yeah,
and he can pick through the traffic at his leisure.
Now that's right. Now the next question will be, how long does it take for Noah Tara to respond? With Stenberg on some fresher rubber, whether or not he's going to be held up a bit. For Tara, he's going to be now in behind lapped traffic of who's that there? That is
Luke Newing is following around at the
Yes, yeah. So Newing's just come out of the lane, and it's actually a lap down. Now there will be some cars that will naturally go a lap down because they have been passed by the race leader, and they will get that lap back when the race leader pits because they have already been in. So a little bit of service there. So Rutledge has let Stenberg go by. Bailey Hall now peels off, so that then is giving Stenberg a nice little bit of momentum through the traffic here. Just keeping an eye on his sector time. So in 14th, his last sector is at 36.5, and he did a personal best in sector 3 of 24.8. So now is the difficult sort of math that we sort of have to work out here. We'll see what his first sector pace is in a few seconds' time relative to what Tara just did and Devonish just did the last time around, and that'll start to be a bit of an indicator. So his first sector pace, he's just chalked that up there. Live timing says that's a 28.3, and that's quicker than both the cars that were ahead of him when he pits. So if you know Tara, you've probably got to consider coming in and doing the crossover in the next lap at least, or he's maybe looking about the other strategy of, I want something to fight with some better tyres at the end, and I'm going to keep going, and that's precisely what he's done. He's decided to keep going. So Devonish had the insurance policy and still continues to have the insurance policy, but Stenberg on the faster, fresher tyres is definitely making some headway here, and probably will be ahead of Noah Tara after the stops. But the real question is, what is the state of his tyres going to be when we get to the back end of this race?
Yeah, I think we're going to see the inverse, because there are a couple of drivers coming in where you would come in to cover Stenberg. Obviously, they're not at a pace of Stenberg, but Damon McDonald and Aidan Williams are both in the lane now. So they're going to, in theory, cover off, or they would be covering off, but they're going to provide us the opportunity to know what it's like to pit exactly at the halfway mark. But they're not the only ones in. Steve Warwick, Daniel Cox, Ethan Knight all also in. So they're going to shuffle down the order as well. But in terms of the people that are likely to be on that lead battle, or could be lead battle pace, McDonald's out in 11th. Actually, Daniel Cox has jumped Aidan Williams and all that. Don't quite know how he managed to do that. And Aidan Williams, maybe we talked about earlier about where you were with fuel. Aidan Williams might have been one of the ones running with exactly half a race worth of fuel in his tank.
Yeah.
So he's had to refill up to that point, whereas the guys around him have run on a full tank. They've got an extra 30 litres they didn't have to fill. So that's why he's now lost, 5 seconds, 6 seconds in the stop.
That's right. Well, I had a bit of a look at what Stenberg's time was from his out lap after he left the lane, because you of course cross the start-finish line before you even enter your pit bay. So his lap time was a 2:09, was sort of the delta with a full stop in there as well, and that was probably pretty quick and pretty spot on. So I'd be interested in looking at what some of the times are of some of these drivers that are running around at the moment when they get around to the start-finish line this time around, and just see what they've actually got on the board.
I'm going to jump in and say it now. Will's been out there too long.
Yeah, I think so.
Because Dostal, I'm pretty sure, has been through the lane. Dostal is actively trying to pass Devonish at this point. Dostal is quicker than the race leader.
Yeah,
he's been out there too long. He's going to be in trouble. I think the only argument, counterpoint, which you mentioned earlier, is he'll have fresher rubber than Kurt, but he's got, basically it's going to be, if this is indicative, it's Kurt's race to lose.
Yeah, that's right. And I look at this as well. The rule here is that if you are a faster car and you are lap traffic, if you can pass the leader safely, you're allowed to do so. But you've then got to demonstrate that you can drive away. And I think Dostal harassing the back of the number 15 is probably evidence of that. And then Devonish has now gone beyond the halfway point and probably needs to consider coming in. Callaghan and Locke are currently in the lane. Dostal has got, what's the car behind him? That's Phil Boak as well, and he's been in the lane as well. So this is now medicine for Devonish. He needs to get in this lap. He is coming in this lap. He has heeded the call.
Yeah, so that's, Devonish is in. I would assume Tara, Tara's also in. So same boat for, I think, Tara. He was getting caught by lap traffic as well. So I'm interested to see just for them, how far clear Kurt is. Curtis has stayed out another lap, so I'm not sure quite what Termo's gambling on. Maybe he's going the other end of the argument of going the freshest tires possible, or I don't know. He's waiting for a safety car that might never come. I don't know.
His lap time
But
last
that's
time
a
around
question for his strategy.
wasn't actually too bad though, Roddy. It was a 1 minute 32.7.
point.
But then when you look at Devonish and Tara, they were 36 and 37, 1 minute 36 and 1 minute 37. That was way too slow, so they had to get in. And Stenberg's setting 2 purple sectors on this lap as well, so he's about to go fastest lap of the race. Just to add a little bit of insult to injury for those guys that stayed out, there it is on your clock right there, 28.9. So substantially quicker than anybody else. The only driver to have posted a 1 minute 28 lap in this race, save for Will Devonish by about a hundredth of a second. So now Stenberg has jumped Will Devonish, and he has jumped Noah Tara in all of this. But the real question is, where has Devonish fed out relative to Stenberg? He's pretty much right on his tail. So if he had have come in a lap earlier, he would have been in front of the number one. Now he's got to pass him all over again.
He does, yeah. He's basically taken all the margin that he earned off of what he could do in that first stint and ate it up entirely within the pit stop. Whether that was the plan or not, I don't know. But that margin is really the only reason, based on the pit stop length and how long he took to come in and the time he lost beforehand, is the only reason he's still within range of Stenberg. If he didn't have the 2 or 3 second lead, he would be much further back, and he'd be, crucially, as they come to the straight in a couple of corners time, he'd be without a doubt out of range of slipstream. Even now, I think he's just far enough back that he won't get any tow. So he's going to have fresher tyres. He's going to have to use them.
That's right. Well, I was keeping an eye on things. Igmanis has gone in. Ryan Smith is the only one that has not stopped yet before the field gets fully cleansed. So with Igmanis in the lane, the Stenberg and Devonish machines will resume in P2 and P3. Your timing tree will change in a few seconds' time to reflect that. But now we all await to see what the number 60 is going to do in the next few minutes or so, whether he is holding out for that safety car or whether he is going to have no choice but to stop. At the moment his lead is 17.4 seconds, but it's going to be nowhere near enough, even if he somehow by a miracle was able to make it home from here. Still all 21 runners in this race. That's the most important thing. Have been keeping an eye on what the pit stops are. Most of the stops have been around the 2 minute 9, 2 minute 10 sort of in-lap to out-lap scenario. But I did see Aidan Williams 2 minute 21 was his lap from when he came into the lane and then exited and did a full lap. So that owes to your suggestion, Rhodey, that perhaps he had to put in a little bit more fuel. He was running a little bit light and a little bit longer fuel fill, and that's the reason why he got jumped by Daniel Cox in pit lane and still is behind Daniel Cox at the moment on timing.
Yeah, that said, he is looking at putting a move on to reverse that. Cox was a little wide coming up through 1, 2, 3, 4, I think 5. Coming now through 6 and coming down Corporate Hill. He's all over the back of him. I think Williams has had better pace than Cox tonight, but Cox is in the command position where he can dictate where he puts his car, and Williams has to play ball around that, and he's doing a pretty good job of holding him up at this point. But I have a feeling that it's going to be more of a when rather than an if as to when Williams will get past. Fastest up there for Devonish as well, 28.5.
Yeah, he was right on Stenberg's hammer as they came across the line. He was really threatening here, and he'll be up the inside, or he'll get a request to get a little bit of space here on the inside at 2. And is he going to drive around the outside at 3? No, he's not. So he's using those fresher tyres right now, but he's got to be careful he doesn't take too much out of them in the effort to pass Stenberg, because Stenberg will make the Camaro as wide as he possibly can. He'll leave the required amount of space where he needs to leave it, but he will make life difficult for the CRE number 15 Mustang to get his first win on the board this year. So it's going to be a good 10-lap run to the flag for these two, I think. We're going to have to keep our eye on them and see how things go. Stenberg was quite happy, I guess, to give up the lead in the first half of the race, thinking that there might be a mistake and a strategy miscalculation from CRE on the road, and indeed there was. And at the moment, he's the one that's got the high ground.
Absolutely, and now that everything's shaken out, we can get an idea of where everyone else has come back. So you had Noah in 3rd, Igmanis 4th. Bernol's actually stuck up to 5th and all that, which is pretty good running.
Yeah, he gained an extra spot on pit road, I think.
The inverse of it was Ryan Smith, who was out the longest. He's dropped back into 10th, and a lot of that will just be because he was trying to go around on tyres that were not having a bar of it in the last couple of laps there.
His last lap was a 1 minute 38.9 before he stopped.
Yes. So he's got a bit of work to do. He's got 4 seconds up the road to catch spec, but he's got 10 laps to do it. So he'll have the freshest tyres of the field. Just a question for him was whether he can actually use them for anything.
Brenton Foley's managed to maintain a 6th place start and into a 6th place position on the road, so good for him. As you said, Cox has currently got Aidan Williams in his rear-view mirror and doing a really good job actually of holding off the fast Valvoline machine. The painter of the car behind is ahead of the car that he painted, if that makes sense. And then Luke Speck not too far behind these two pair. He was actually a 10th of a second quicker than the two of them last time around as well, so he might join the fray. And then we know that Ryan Smith's got a bit of pace. When he gets up to speed, fully expect that he will be trying to make a bit of a surge towards these two as well.
Absolutely. Most of that we'll start to see boil out as we get towards the end of them. We're really not far off the end of this race, to be fair. We've got we're in 10 laps to go. Devonish is still just floating around behind Stenberg. He's a little closer than he has been the last couple of laps, but I think you're right. Stenberg's going to make this hard for him. And Will, to be fair, he's going to be pretty smart with it. He knows he doesn't have to burn up more tyre than he has to, and all that matters is leading to cross the line at the end of the last lap. But that said, I don't think he's going to wait till then. He's alongside on the run into 1.
He certainly is. He's got the inside this time because he was on the outside last time around. He's got a little bit more purchase to leave him the space. Now he's got a lot more overlap this time going down into turn number 2. He's a lot further alongside, and now he's clear of the number 1. A little bit of Morse code between the two of them as they exit turn 2. Now he's just got to settle in here. He can't afford to move in the braking zone down at 4 and cover it too late. He can hold on to the outside here. A bit of door handle to door handle contact. So it's hostilities haven't quite reached the boiling point yet, but that was the smart decision from Devonish not to cover the line at turn 4 because you could cover it at turn 5. Stenberg covers it, tries to go up the inside at turn 6. Devonish will have the traction out of 6 though. Now he has to defend down the inside of turn 8. You've got no choice. That naturally takes you out to the right hand side of the circuit. Then he can plant the car right there. That's exactly what he had to do. Head off the opportunity there, but he locks the brake. He runs a little bit deep. So Stenberg tries for the undercut. This is a fantastic scrap for the first spot on the road and the rostrum, and they go into the last sequence of corners here. Don't run too wide because you open up the door for your opponent to come underneath you if you go out of that concrete. Devonish has done a good job there, but he's got to stay focused now because now the shoe's on the other foot. He's the one towing Stenberg around the circuit. So a poor exit here or there for Devonish, and it'll be reversed back the other way again in the next lap or so.
Absolutely. We're still going to keep locked in, and he's realistically the next couple of laps is where he's still going to be putting in those sort of times and that sort of effort that he was putting in to get to and then to get past Stenberg to make sure that he can head him off, because he does in theory still have a tyre advantage. What that would be after the battling, we don't know, but in theory there'd be a tyre advantage there. And realistically, the more he can build himself as a margin, the more he's going to make Kurt work for it. Kurt might have the pace in reserve. We don't know how much he's hung on to, how much of this is him, at his limit. We could still see a charge at the end, but the best way to have some insurance against that is to build margin now.
That's right. So these two are going to try and take off up the road because Noatara in third place is coming pretty quickly for them at the moment. His lap times are definitely quicker last time. It's 29.0 actually. He was a full second and a half faster than the pair of them last time around as they fought and argued. Now that that's settled down and Will's trying to disappear off into the distance, Kurt's just going to have to keep an eye on the rear view mirror for the next couple of laps and just not allow that margin to erode at any great rate. Like he could afford to probably bleed maybe a tenth or two a lap, but if you start bleeding 4 and 5 tenths a lap, then you're going to have a very hot and angry number 26 Mustang on your rear bar before the end of the race.
Absolutely, and I was going to say they're in a good spot as well because I've just had a look through the field and they've got no traffic to worry about for the next couple of laps.
So that's the other thing that goes against them here as well, is that Stenberg hasn't got any lap traffic that he can pass in the next handful of laps to keep this man at bay. Fourth place, Igmanis. He's pretty much almost the full front straightaway behind the number 26, but he's got this guy bearing down on him as well. Damon McDonald has been silently going along. Brenton Foley's actually been going along pretty quietly as well. Give you an idea of the lap times. Fourth place Igmanis, 29.9 last time around, and that was the first time in about 3 laps that he's been quicker than the 2 cars that are pursuing him. So McDonald was a 30.1 and Foley a 30.0.
Yeah, not much in it. Like we're talking tenths of a difference, which is unfortunate for the 2 following because they are seconds away, not tenths of a second away from the cars that they're chasing. But look, if they can keep with it, like Damon, like I think Damon is like we mentioned it earlier and how his pace is that. With the longer race, with the opportunity to really start to get settled with the car, he's starting to really show something here. Not quite necessarily the Will Devonish, Kurt Stenberg, Noah Turra pace, but he's doing a good job cracking along here. And Foley, you know, he's been racing these for as long as we've been broadcasting, and technically even longer. Yeah, he's just getting back into the seat with these things, but good to see him poking around the top 5, top 6 as well.
Yeah, good to see that's a bit of a return to form. He had a bit of a lacklustre year last year, Brendan Foley, I must admit. There was a few occasions where we were sort of looking at it going, you know what, he could actually make a good fist of this if he had a couple of good breaks his way. The one track that springs to mind was the really good battle that he and Kurt Stenberg had at the Bend last year. That was sort of vintage Foley at a winding back the clock sort of scenario. But good to see that for Foley, this is probably one of the better starts to the year that he's had, especially in this race. Race 1 didn't go according to plan, but he was up there until that little moment that wasn't his fault.
Yeah, it's cycling back up to the front, and at this point the gap between first and second is equal to the gap between second and third, which means Turra's on his way. Turra can actually see Stenberg now, and he's got Stenberg only another 5 laps to do with it. There's still 3 seconds the margin, so still a little bit of work to do, and realistically Turra's going to get to and have maybe a lap at most to do something with that, with the position he's going to be right behind him. But yeah, I think at this point Kurt's still... Safe is an overselling of it, but I think he's very much... He's not having to worry just yet. No,
not just yet. Luke Newing's just managed to pass Brandon Dostal. These two have not left each other all race long, considering their little indiscretion down here at this part of the track in the early going. So they've continued that battle, and I think from Newing's point of view, he would love to finish ahead of Dostal, given that little incident. What it, it set them back probably a good 10 seconds or so at least. In race trim, they could have been, into the top 10 or very close to the fringes of the top 10 had it not been for that scenario. But they've still got to pass Lockie Lock, who's in 12th, in the next few laps if they can manage to make that happen. And Lock is sort of running all on his own because the next man in front of him, Darryl Callaghan, is about 5 seconds in arrears of Daniel Cox, who has now officially been passed by Luke Speck, and he's been passed by Aiden Williams, and he's been passed by Ryan Smith. So that 7th place finish for Daniel Cox unfortunately went out the window not too long ago. Ryan Smith has actually closed in on the back of Aiden Williams, who's made a little mistake in the approach to turn number 1, the high-speed approach to turn number 1, and Smith will be up the inside here at turn 2. No, not quite, not this occasion.
No, he wasn't far off. I think it's just for the nose that put the pressure on him. But that said, he is still putting the pressure on Aiden, and then as we mentioned last year, only a few runs in the series, so he hasn't got the seat time, hasn't got the experience, and Ryan's very much sort of flexing on him with that, in his ability to sit there and put some pressure on him. He is running as Dale Earnbred in some of our other racing, obviously a play on Earnhardt, and maybe that's something he's going to try and bring into his racing this year, the Intimidator.
What a move
very
that
lucky
was.
to catch. Very lucky for the both of them to catch that. They were both very sideways there. That might help the tyre life. But to talk about tyre life, Smith does have the best of the field, which is why he's able to cut through like he is.
I tell you what, he was he had about 3-4 fistfuls of opposite lock in different directions there compared to Aiden Williams. So he had a real fight in his hands and probably had to get out of the throttle, I would have said as well, to be able to settle the rear down to get it straight again. I tell you what, Speck is in touching distance here of these two. Aiden Williams got a track violation last time around as well, so the stewards have taken a dim view of him going a bit too wide or cutting a corner here. And you've got to be careful there too, because he left the door open by going onto the concrete. Smith knows the rules as better as anybody, and he's up the inside of the number 95 in a flash, and now has command of position heading down the road into turn number 1. Should get this done pretty easily. Does get it done pretty easily.
And now he's just going to worry about the next couple of corners. But yeah, with this is really, I think the rest of the race for these two, outside of if if Spec comes in the picture, because the next car up the road from them is 10 seconds away.
Yeah, so this is as far as these two go, and it's a case of can they swap back the other way, or is Luke Spec going to swing through and maybe grab another spot, potentially off of Aiden Williams. Ewing's finally managed to break the chains of Brandon Dostal, has he? Or has Dostal made a mistake, or what's happened there? Actually, where is Dostal? Yeah, he's actually managed to get back ahead, actually, so it must have been a mistake for Ewing. There he is. Yeah, he's a good few seconds up the road, actually, ahead of the number 15 machine, so that's a little bit of a disappointing end, I guess, to Ewing's race, but he'll bring it home. They managed to get some good points today, though, so that's a good start to SES Shogun for the year. Now, what's happening with the margin from P2 to P3? It's getting closer and closer. It's 1.6 seconds, but I think time's running out for Tara here. I think Devonish is far enough down the road. That's done and dusted. Kurt Stenberg lost 0.5 of a second to Tara last time around, and there's only 2.5 more laps to go. So if Tara continues to raise the margin at that rate, it would be a change of position, or very close to a change of position on the last lap. All that Stenberg's got to do is just got to get one lap in that maybe he only loses a 10th instead of 5/10, and that would then be enough. But where's the strong point? Where's the weak point? It's 0.4 of a second already in Sector 1, so that's not a good sign this lap. Second sector marker comes up right about now. We'll get the margins, 1.6 there on the screen. It stayed at roughly 1.6, so they were pretty even through the actual fact. They were very close to even through the second sector. There was only 0.03 of a second difference between the two of them. So Tara's making most of his gains in Sector 1, which is the parts of the course where you lean on that right tyre quite substantially.
Yeah, so he's doing a pretty good job at getting up there. But that's the thing, yeah, with that null change in the second sector, he's only made 0.2 out of the last sector, and it's hard to make time in that last sector. It's really just a pair of straights with a corner in the middle. It's going to come down to basically he's going to beat his back bumper, probably coming over Copper Hill the last time, and I'm not sure you can do much past that.
No, I don't think so either. So Bailey Hall is managing to get onto the back of Luke Ewing here, so I'm wondering if Ewing's tyres are just, maybe they're a little bit over-pressured, maybe they changed the pressure on the incoming set, and maybe he's gone a little bit backwards, or maybe after that little incident or something that's happened and see him drop positions to both Dostal and to Ethan Knight. Maybe he's just struggling a little bit here, because the Vortex number 38 is pretty close to the rear bumper of the Camaro. And behind Bailey, it's Steve Warwick and then Cam Rutledge. He's actually the last man on the lead lap. Not sure what's happened to... we know what happened to Ben Hall. We know what happened to Rory Collins. I'm not sure what happened to Philip Boat to put him down the lap.
I'm unsure. Probably would have had to be through the lane at some point. He's only just been passed by Will. That said, it's probably just a mistake and maybe just outright pace difference. Rather than coming through the lane again.
Yeah, having a look at the lap times, there was a 1:43 lap in there as well a couple of laps ago, so maybe there's just a bit of mistake on the road at some point or another. Last lap is underway, and race leader he's got the better part of 5.5 seconds in his pocket. This battle for second place is getting closer, but it's only second the margin. Maybe a little bit less. It looks like it's a little bit less now. Timing says it's 0.7. Visually on the timing tree on your screen, it says it's around about a second. First sector marker here reads it as 0.7 of a second, or just under, and there's some lap traffic in the way. Phil Boak, he won't make life difficult for these guys. He knows the drill. He'll stay wide and let Stenberg through. There he goes, and he'll let Noah Tara through, I'd say, as well at turn 6. Yep, good driving there, but for Tara, he had to go offline to make that pass, but he's still got some good pace in the car. Round Corporate Hill for the final time. You said, Roddy, he might have been on his back bumper. He's not quite there. He's still pretty close, but I think for Stenberg, he has done enough probably to hang on to second place here. He's got enough of a margin now that it should be home and hose going through the final sequence of corners. But the final sequence of corners is being navigated by Will Devonish now, He's going to take the second race victory of the year, and it's 1 win apiece for the top 2 in the championship and 1 second place apiece for the top 2 in the championship. Tied on points at the end of round number 1. Will Devonish, your winner for the feature race. Second place to Kurt Stenberg, third place to Noah Turra.
Absolutely, great running by the 3 of them. Curtis Igmanis will come home in a slightly distant 4th place, but still good running for Igmanis. That's a 3rd and a 4th to him
good job
in today's running. That's a pretty good, probably one of his better starts to a Supercars season. With Foley home in 5th and Darian McDonald home in 6th. So that's more of what we're expecting to see of him pace-wise.
Well, that's actually a change between the 2 of them in the final stages of that race too, because remember, Foley was pursuing McDonald after the pit stop sequence, so they changed positions after that. So good result for both of them in that one. Oh, Ryan Smith has money shifted across the line, and I think that's probably intentional.
That was, yep.
Luke Speck in 8th. Aiden Williams faded to 9th, so he actually dropped a spot to Speck after all of that. So good run from Speck, good pressure to keep it up and demote Williams to 9th. Daniel Cox in 10th place. Callaghan in 11th, and Lockie Locke will finish in 12th. And then behind Locke, Brandon Dostal in 13th, so behind him, Newing in 14th, who's managed to jump ahead of Dostal's teammate Ethan Knight. In 15th, Bailey Hall 16th, and then the last of the runners on the lead lap, he had Steve Warwick in 17th and Cam Rutledge in 18th. Those 1 lap down, Phil Boak, Rory Collins and Ben Hall.
Yeah, so good running by everyone. Good to see. Importantly, we had everybody finish both races.
Absolutely, we did have everybody finish both races, and I did say it was going to take about 48 minutes or so to complete the sprint race, so the long distance race, and for the race winner it was 47 minutes and 20 seconds. So there you go, wasn't too far off the winner, and the last person across the line did it in 48 minutes and 41. So my math is not too bad, Rody.
No, your math was pretty much on the money there, and look, I suppose the important bit, I suppose, for those that are worried about time, given that it is 10:30 for us and there are no Kiwis, but it would be 12:30 for them, is that, yeah, they've got it finished about as on time as possible. They managed to, although we might have spiced up the action, they managed to avoid causing a safety car. So it goes with what I said earlier for SMP, that, yeah, for whatever reason, the way the track is set up, it's just, yeah, well, that, and maybe it's just the generous runoffs it's provided in nearly every corner, every straight. That mean it's very hard to get race control and throw a safety car.
That's it, and also this is a bit of a unique format too. This is the first time and the only time this year you'll see the dual qualifying format in a scenario where there's 2 different layouts on the circuit that are being raced. So that's just a little bit unique. It probably, if we had have had the progressive grid from race 1 to race 2, it would have been something slightly different. But apart from that, the only time that you will see that this round. So cars heading back to pit lane. Roddy's going to go and round up a couple of people for some interviews, and we will have a chat. But as it sits right now, it is the 2 title protagonists from last year, Kurt Stenberg and Will Devonish, that are sharing the spoils for the round. 150 points apiece for the both of them, and by courtesy of 2 pole positions for the round, I think you could say you could probably give the edge to Will Devonish. It won't, the pole positions don't pay any points in ASR, but I think if they were going back on tiebreakers, that would be the only one between the 2 of them that breaks that way.
Absolutely. I'm just telling off who we'll go with. I think we'll probably just, given the time, we'll probably just go for the podium sitters across the 2 races, which is going to be Kurt Stenberg, Will Devonish, Curtis Igmanis, and Noah Turra.
Yeah, that's correct. So you're absolutely right. So yeah, 2 of them finished on the podium in both races, and there was 1 podium apiece for Igmanis in race 1 and Noah Turra in race number 2. So that's how everything unfolded. We are getting a few of the drivers to filter through at the moment, so while Rody is rounding them up, we do have them all sort of making their way in now. We will jump to our Beyond Electrical podium sitters for race for the weekend. So let's, Rody, who are we going to start with? This is the hard one. I think they've both tied on points for the round because they've got a race win and they've got a second place each. But by virtue of the two pole positions, I would say probably Will Devonish is the one we probably should start with first.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. So yeah, you're right. You guys have come out of this tied on points, which I'm not sure. I don't know what the planning or what the thought was coming into tonight, but Will Devonish, not the perfect start to the season, but a pretty good one all the same.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy, and I think you might find the second race has slightly more points than the first, but I'm pretty happy with how the round turned out. Look, for the team, I think it's the best start of a season we've had, so really happy with that. Coming to Eastern Creek's not a track I normally like, so getting a win was pretty good. And yeah, the racing was really really clean, really fun. Kurt and I were like giving it to each other. But yeah, really fair, and it was great racing.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, you talked about that, and we got some good little moments there of some very gentlemanly racing between the pair of you. It didn't quite go to the elbows out stuff we were seeing from the IRL Supercars drivers here a couple of weeks ago. But what was your thoughts on running two different tracks in the one night?
I think again you'll find that was my idea, but it was a great idea. I thought it was really good to mix it up. Actually were slight tweaks you make between the races, and yeah, and they offered different types of racing. Where the long layout you get some nice hard braking areas where you can overtake. Where the short layout you don't really get that. So yeah, I thought two races in one night, two different tracks. It was mad fun.
Beautiful. We got a pretty quick turnaround thanks to the cyclone that swung through a little while ago. So in 2 weeks' time, we're heading to Gold Coast. What's your thoughts?
Street circuit, not the strongest there, but look, we had a good setup from last year. A couple of tweaks. I'm hoping to be up the pointy end of the field, so we'll see what happens.
Very good. Well, great work tonight, Will, and we'll catch you in a couple of weeks' time.
Thank you.
Moving on over to, at least by our math, equal first place. We'll actually see how the points shuffle out next week. But Kurt Stenberg, you came back in 2025 with one mission, and it was to get ahead of Luke Rosella on the all-times win board. Thanks to Will, you're going to have to come back to round number 2 to achieve that.
Yeah, that I am. But hey, look, at least we got one win tonight. Hey, that was a perfect start to the season. I honestly expected to be weaker on the Druitt circuit than on the Gardner circuit, and it ended up being the other way around, which surprised me. So I do think the way the races played out, my pace on the soft tyre. I mean, last year we were on mixed compounds here. My pace on the soft tyre here wasn't as great as it was on the hard. So interesting to note that, because I ran pretty much the same car.
Well, so that would have helped a little bit. Do you find a need to make any setup changes between the two tracks, or could you run basically the same car across both and achieve the same sort of pace?
Well, that's the thing that's interesting to me. As I came in tonight and I'd only driven the Druitt circuit, like that was the only place I'd done laps. So I didn't like how the car felt. It felt a bit loose. So I made a bit of a spring rate change, and that was the only change I made. And then raced on it, and it felt quite good. Like I was pretty happy with it, and I was surprised that it felt quite good. I mean, that first race, man, I'd hit track limit. I know Will messaged me privately and said that I was really good for the flip flop. I was on track limits there from lap 16 onwards, so I had to be so careful. But the car felt pretty good, and that was why I mainly made that change, just to soften the car up for that flip flop. But then I went back to my setup from last year for the Gardner circuit, and yeah, it was good. The car felt really good, but after about 8 laps, it's just tires just went. So made a bit of a change in the stop. We actually changed to the tire pressure change in the stop, and the car was better in the long run, but it still wasn't good enough to stay in the lead. So, but we had to try something. We had to go for the undercut and try something, because we weren't achieving anything staying out any longer, as everybody watching could have probably seen.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, great strategy play by yourself there, and unfortunately didn't quite come up the way you wanted to, but still, very good start to the year, and this guarantees that we will be seeing you again in a couple of weeks' time at Surfers. Just quickly, what is your thoughts about going to Surfers?
It's interesting. I mean, I didn't vote for Surfers. So I want to be clear for that. I know it was the round. I voted for Albert Park because I quite like Albert Park. I think it's a majorly underrated V8 track, and anyone who watched the racing over the weekend should agree with me because it was amazing on that layout. I think the old layout's better actually as well for supercars, not for F1 but for supercars. But yeah, look, Surface Paradise, we've gone okay there in the past. It's been a controversial track. Last year we didn't qualify well and we got caught up in crap. The format looks quite good, so hey, I'll definitely come and have a crack. But I will say that I know we're tight on points. I don't know my commitments this year. It's a bit of a busy year, and I know I've got some clashes along the way, but we'll see how we go throughout the year and what we can achieve. If we can do more of the rounds, we will, but we'll see how we go. That's the thing.
Oh, good. Well, good to see you back again tonight, Kurt. Good to see the chicken sponsorship on the car, and we'll hopefully catch you in a couple of weeks' time for Gold Coast.
No worries. Can I just say a big thanks to no one tonight because no one helped me. My spotter is my usual spotter, Colin Warwick, is down in Canberra, so he was at a Kingsley's chicken establishment earlier today, and that's the whole idea behind the sponsorship. So unbelievable chicken, awesome chips. If you're ever in Canberra, give it a try. It's fucking awesome.
Fair enough. Well, thanks to nobody for Kurt's efforts tonight. We'll catch you again soon, Kurt.
See ya.
Alrighty, swinging on over to race 1 podium sitter in Koto Segmanis and Tomo. It's been a little while since we've last seen you on a Supercars podium.
Yep, sure has.
Okay, we're doing this. Okay, I'd go back and pull up the stats, but I can't remember how far it's been. But it has been a little while. It was good to see the pace you were able to pull out tonight, both in race 1 and then pretty good pace out of qualifying for race number 2 as well.
Yeah, I don't know how I did that lap in second qualifying. She was up and I just stuck with it. But no, I think I did really well considering not good around this track.
Yeah, well, that is a good way to look at it, especially given your feelings about the track. It is probably your strongest start to a season, at least in a couple of years. How's that feeling?
Scary.
Alrighty. Well, coming into obviously we're heading to the Surfers in a couple of weeks' time. What's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, it's a straight circuit. It's going to be chaos.
All right. Thank you, Tomo. You're helping me to keep this on time. Good to see you up on the podium again, and hopefully we'll see you at the pointy end again in a couple of weeks' time.
Thank you.
Alrighty, and then over to Noah Turrell. Hopefully give me a few more words in his sentences. Noah, good pace for yourself to start the season as well. You weren't quite able to get to Will in race number, to get to Kurt in race number 2, but still very good running for yourself.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I kind of struggled a bit around the shorter circuit. I hadn't turned any laps till today, but yeah, I had pretty good pace like I expected on the I think Gardner layout, and yeah, just didn't quite get there. Just probably one too many mistakes. Kurt drove pretty well, so like, yeah, went about pretty well. I thought I was going to be third, so I was.
Yeah, and you also had some good battling in race number 1 on the Druitt circuit. You and Ryan Smith and Aidan Williams having a pretty good battle there over third place. Sorry, not third, over 5th.
Yeah, it got pretty willing for a bit there, but I was a bit frustrated. I hadn't gotten away at the start a bit better, and yeah, a couple too many mistakes, and I kind of suffered for it. But good on Termo, just like keeping behind watching us, and he eventually capitalized on the chaos that ensued.
Well, as I've mentioned all the others, and obviously as for all the other drivers, you'll be heading to Gold Coast in a few weeks' time. Very much a change from the layout of SMP. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, love that track. I know I always seem to go well with it, and it's really enjoyable to drive. Very scary, but kind of part of it. So yeah, good fun. Keen for it.
Awesome. Well, good to see you up fighting with the pointy end of it, Noah, and we'll catch you in a few weeks' time at Gold Coast.
Yep. Thank you, Eddie.
And that has been our podium sitters.
Good on you, Rody. The chat has officially lit up with the Termo speech and all those sorts of things. But of course, we got the classic Termo out of all of that. I can't remember how long it's been since we had him up here having a little bit of a chat with us, but good to see he's lost none of his sense of humour. If he wasn't the likes of a Terminator like Arnold Schwarzenegger, then I don't know what he'd be. But classic Termo through and through. As Rody said, the next track is, of course, the Gold Coast. For Supercars, it comes up in 2 weeks. For the development series, it is 7 days away. So, as Rody said, if you're looking for the quote-unquote broadcast of the development series, it is on a channel called Over the Edge. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rody, because I'm pretty sure that's what you said.
It is on the edge.
On the edge, sorry.
We will be posting. We will pop a link in the. We should be able to have a link pop somewhere in the description for the race 2 stream. But yeah, on the edge, I believe is what they're called. Okay. And that will be posted in the Discord, obviously, when they go live in a week's time.
Certainly will. We will join you for round 2 of the Supercars Championship in 2 weeks' time. Great start to the year. Fantastic racing all around, and good to see everybody got home. So until then, everybody, please drive safe, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.